Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to the City of Asbury Park's regular planning board meeting. Today is October 4th, 2021, and it is almost 7 p.m. Chairwoman, would you please call us to order?
I'm officially calling this meeting to order. Okay, this meeting is being held in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the Coaster and Asbury Park Press by publication of the annual meeting notice and posted on the municipal bulletin board and a municipal website. All notices are on file with the board secretary. Official action may be taken on the following matters before this board. Fire exits are located on the east and west sides of the council chambers, as well as the back of the building. I will ask everyone with a cell phone or other device to kindly silence your device for the duration of this meeting. This meeting is being recorded by APTV for your viewing pleasure in the future. Please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mayor John Moore.
Here.
Councilwoman Yvonne Clayton. Here. Michael Manzella.
Here.
Jim Henry is absent. Jennifer Souter is absent. Alexis Taylor.
Here.
Eric Gallipo.
Here.
Rick Lambert is absent. And Barbara Krizak.
Here.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, the agenda had to be just flipped around a little bit in anticipation of the possibility of us not having a quorum. We're fortunate enough now to have a quorum, but we left it flipped anyway. It just seemed easier. Okay. We have the first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of September 13th, 2021 from a regular meeting. If anyone has any concerns, please let me know. If not, can I get a motion to approve the minutes of September 13th?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Eric Gallipo and a second by Michael Manzella. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Minutes approved.
Okay. The first application that we have is for 1317 to 1319 spring.
Sorry.
Oh, no, we don't. Oh, old agenda. Okay, it's not. 302 Atkins Avenue, please, come on up.
Madam Chairwoman, I've reviewed the submissions, the notices and the like for this project. They're in proper form and we have jurisdiction. However, the applicant has to supply me with an affidavit of service. Everything else was in order, so I know that the service was correct, but I just need that affidavit in the file.
Okay.
And I've spoken to Mr. Perry. He's going to supply it to Irene tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Hunt Perry. I represent the applicant.
Great.
And my first witness I'll call is Paul McEvely.
All right, do we want to swear the witnesses in?
Yeah, we're going to swear in Mr. McEverly. How are you, Paul?
Good, thank
Good
you,
evening.
Chuck.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony about to give this evening the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name for the record and spell it.
Paul McEvely, last name McEvely, M-C-E-V as in Victor, I-L-Y.
Okay, and while we're doing that, let's get Michael and Doug sworn. Gentlemen, please raise your right hands. You solemnly swear your testimony about to give this matter be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Please state your names for the record and your affiliation with the board.
Michael Sullivan, Clark Caton Hits, board planner.
Thank you.
Doug Cullen, on-site engineering, board engineer.
Thank you. Okay, floor is yours, Mr. Perry.
Thank you. Mr. McEvely, would you tell the board where you're employed?
Yes. I'm the Executive Director at Interfaith Neighbors at 810 4th Avenue here in Asbury Park.
And would you describe for the board what is Interfaith Neighbors?
Yeah, so a few words about Interfaith Neighbors. We're a community-based not-for-profit. We've been around for 33 years. Our service territory is all of Monmouth County. We operate a homeless prevention program, a senior meal program, meals to the food insecure, We're a developer of affordable housing. We have economic development programs, workforce development programs, and we have training programs for local residents. Many of these programs are geared to young adults or to the reentry population. Since 2010, we've operated a business development center on the west side of Asbury Park, helping entrepreneurs establish local businesses and or grow existing businesses. Some notable successes of that business development center that we have worked with would be Lake House Music here in Asbury Park, Second Life Bikes. We're currently working with Macro Bites, which is now occupying the space formerly housing the Kula Cafe. We have a particular focus on the west side of Asbury Park. We have a state-approved neighborhood revitalization plan, which gives us access to the state's neighborhood revitalization tax credit program. Since 2009, we've attracted approximately $9 million in tax credit investments to revitalize the West Side community, which we leverage with other private capital for the benefit of West Side residents. 60% of those NRTC dollars have to go to affordable housing and or economic development. The remainder can go to programming that benefits the West Side residents. Approximately $1 million in tax credit investments have been allocated out to other agencies that serve the population of Asbury Park. This would be Big Brothers Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Club, Community Affairs and Resource Center, Coastal Habitat, to name a few. Tax credit investments have also put lights on the Little League field, purchased a new vehicle for Citizens on Patrol, a new vehicle for the Police Department's Young Cadets program, and supports the Music in the Park Summer Series in Springwood Avenue Park. Interfaith Neighbors is also a licensed New Jersey builder. We've built over 60 units of affordable housing, most of them single-family detached homes, as infill on the west side of Asbury Park for low-income first-time home buyers, as I say, most of them on the west side of Asbury Park. We operate a Pathway to Home Ownership program on Borden Avenue. We built and leased to Covenant House the 2 rites of passage facilities on Prospect Avenue. We were the developer of Springwood Center. That's the first new commercial space on Springwood Avenue since the civil disturbances of 1970. That houses 4 storefronts on Springwood Avenue, the city's senior center, and 8 affordable rental units on the 3rd floor, which we own and manage. All told, we have invested or caused to be invested over $35 million in new capital on the west side over the last 10 years.
Would you describe to the board the current project?
Yes, this would be the Early Childhood Learning and Care Center at 302 Atkins Avenue. Previously at that location, the Bridges Educational Learning Center for children ages 2.5 to 13 years operated. It had a capacity of a maximum of 42 children. It's been shuttered for 3 or more years now. The site is in disrepair, both building and grounds. Interestingly enough, there is no off-street parking with the current improvements. There is a driveway with maybe 2 or 3 cars could be stacked, but there is no on-site parking. Interfaith Neighbors acquired the property earlier this year. All existing improvements are to be demolished to make way for a new 2-story state-of-the-art learning and care center. The new building is designed to meet or exceed all current state standards for a facility of this kind. It will accommodate infants from 3 months to 3 years of age. A separate facility is being designed to accommodate 4 to 5-year-olds, which will be part of a large mixed-use development project we're currently planning on property we own across from Springwood Center. Maximum child capacity for the project that's before you tonight will be 36 children, which we will grow to over the first 3 years of operations. There is currently no learning and care facility for children 3 months to 3 years in this neighborhood. In planning this facility, we have hired Dr. Linda Eno as our educational consultant. Dr. Eno, who cannot unfortunately be with us here tonight, received her doctorate in education from Seton Hall University. She has an MBA from Monmouth University and a Bachelor of Science degree from Thomas Edison State University. Dr. Eno has worked as a registered nurse, was a teacher at the Academy of Allied Health and Science. She was the founding principal for the county's Biotechnology High School, was the principal of biotechnology for 10 years, during which time Biotechnology High School was ranked as the #1 high school in the state of New Jersey and the 11th best high school in the country. More recently, Dr. Eno worked with the State Department of Education, rising to the level of Assistant Commissioner in the Division of Academics and Performance. Early childhood education was part of her portfolio at the State Department of Education. Linda was recruited to the Assistant Commissioner's job by Dr. Repollet, who many of you know became Commissioner of the Department of Education, having previously served as Superintendent of the Asbury Park School District. Dr. Eno is overseeing the curriculum choice for the new facility, worked with ShorePoint on the building's design, has been our point of contact with the State Department of Education, is designing the instructional and care day, and is devising staff and training protocols for the new center. Dr. Eno also works with an advisory board that we have established of neighborhood residents and community leaders, and has overseen the collection and analyzing of over 175 resident surveys, which resoundingly indicate a need for this type of facility on the west side. This project will represent an additional investment by Interfaith Neighbors of over $3 million, which covers acquisition, demolition, new construction, and the first 3 years of operating costs. A generous benefactor has committed to fully supporting operational costs for the first 3 years so that no child will be denied the opportunity to attend because of an inability to pay tuition. 2 final comments, if I may. We expect to work not just with the children who are attending the Early Childhood Center, but to reach out in a holistic sort of way to their extended families to make them aware of and connect them to other services that either we offer or that other not-for-profits offer. Not just the attending child, but their siblings as well as other family members can overcome challenges and start down the road to the greatest possible success. My last comment here this evening sets the stage for our professionals to address the reports prepared by the board's engineer and the board's planner. In my reading of the 16 pages of detailed comments offered by the engineer and the planner, one word appears in the planner's report that caught my eye, and that's the word brutal. Let me quote directly from Mr. Sullivan and Ms. Miller's report. The architecture presents a rather brutal public face. While our architect looks forward to addressing that comment as it relates to the design of the building, I find its appearance as a descriptor in the planner's report to be ironic, because this whole project, at its heart, is intended to address and overcome the oftentimes brutal environment that distressed urban area children are sometimes subjected to. Lack of quality housing, lack of affordable housing, lack of adequate household income, lack of access to healthy food choices or enough food so as not to go hungry, lack of quality childcare, lack of early learning opportunities, lack of a safe environment in which to grow and thrive. This is, yes, the brutal nature of the environment, oftentimes not evident as a public face, but too often behind the scenes reality we are intent on addressing with this project in combination with our other programs. I leave it to Mr. Carledge to debunk the brutal descriptor as it relates to the architecture itself. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have no further questions of the witness.
Okay. Does anybody else, anybody on the planning board have any questions that they would like to address? Our professionals? Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Members of the public?
Any member of the public that would like to ask any questions of the witness? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Next witness.
I'd like to call it Steve Carledge. He's around here somewhere.
Is that really Steve Carledge behind that?
That's the Steve
The
Carledge.
one and only?
The.
Okay. Sir, please raise your right hand. Solemnly swear that the testimony about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please state your name for the record and spell it.
Yes, Stephen Carledge, AIA, ShorePoint Architecture, that's Carlidge.
Thank you. Your witness.
Okay.
Carledge, you state for the board where you're employed.
Yeah, I'm the president and owner of ShorePoint Architecture in Ocean Grove, about 2 blocks from here.
How long have you been in business?
We've been in business there since 2001.
And prior to going into business, what's your educational background?
I have a Bachelor of Architecture from Virginia Tech in 1980. And I still serve on the professional advisory board to the School of Architecture at Virginia Tech.
You appear before this board and the zoning board on many occasions?
I don't recall appearing before this board, but I know I have because of some of the other projects we've done in town, but a lot of the faces look new. But I've been practicing architecture continuously in New Jersey as a licensed architect since 1983. In fact, I know many of you know all of the deficiencies of this building, and in fact, the mayor commented earlier that the building is obsolete. But the first project I was ever assigned to draft upon my graduation from school was this very building that we're sitting in when I worked for Floyd R. Scott, who, as many of you might remember, was a very prominent architect who resided here in Asbury Park. Our office was in Red Bank, but Floyd was a resident of Asbury Park. So.
Madam Chair, I submit that this is our expert in architecture.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Carlidge, would you describe for the board the current project?
Sure. I know she sent you the, you want to
Got it,
go on.
yeah.
I'm going to work through the plans first. If you also have, if you want to put them up on the screen. Okay, the building is a 4,800 square foot, two-story building, which fronts on Atkins Avenue on the property that's bounded on the other two, the north and east by the middle school playground area, the grounds. Before we get to that, can you go to the next sheet? I just want to work through the plans so that everyone understands the way the building will operate. Then we'll deal with the design of the building.
Why don't we make this A1, Irina?
Yes, sir.
There we go. So, as I mentioned, the building fronts on Atkins Avenue, right here, and everyone will enter the building on Atkins Avenue either by a stair or a ramp, and you'll enter into a secure lobby. Upon entering the building, there's a receptionist who will have complete control of the access to the building. On the first floor, there are 2 activity rooms, one of which will house infants, and the other of which will house infants and toddlers. These will be the youngest children in the building. Those activity rooms are provided with restrooms. In the case of the infant toddler room, there will be a children's restroom with the fixtures lower for the children. Both of those activity rooms also have changing areas so that those things that have to take place can take place with young children. Off the lobby, there is also a public restroom for anyone that comes in and needs a facility. They can use a public restroom right off the lobby without having to enter into any of the areas where the children will be housed. I just want to point out that this is a secure lobby. The only way anybody gets into these spaces is if the receptionist electronically opens the door to allow you to enter your child into the space. So the children are always kept in a secure area. There are it's a 2-story building, 25 foot 4 inches to the roof deck, 27 foot 4 inches to the top of the coping. There are 2 egress stairs in the building, one on the front and one on the rear. On the second floor, there is a 3rd activity space which will house toddlers and 3-year-olds. Again, that space has a children's restroom. It also has a changing area because some of them will still need that facility. We also on this floor have an office, a main office for the facility, a conference room where staff can meet with parents, a training room for staff training, a complete nurse's suite with its own bathroom, a laundry facility, and additional public restrooms and a staff lunch room. And that's the whole building. Paul mentioned that we worked with Dr. Eno. The building is completely compliant with the New Jersey Department of Children and Family Services requirements in Chapter 5 of their facility requirements, which is NJAC 3:52. The department recommends that there be space provided in activity areas at the rate of 35 square foot per student for all interior areas and 35 square foot per child for all exterior play areas. At the advice of Dr. Eno, we've gone beyond that. Our activity areas are planned out to provide 42 square foot per child in all 3 of the activity areas, and we do comply with the 35 square foot per child in the exterior space, which you'll see on the site plan in a moment. The building, the exterior space, and the parking that we're providing, as you'll see when we get to the site plan, literally consumes the entire site. We're trying to max out everything we can do and accommodate as many children as we can on this property with this facility. So we think the plan works well. It's already been submitted to Trenton, to the Department of Children and Family Services, reviewed and approved by them. So we know we have an approvable plan. And now with respect to some of the architectural comments, I know your planner only saw the drawings in black, white, and gray, so he did see what apparently looked to him as if it was a rather plain box.
For the record, I did acknowledge that, too.
I agree. But just so everyone understands, we envision this to be a very bright, a beacon in this neighborhood. We want this to be a place where the kids want to go. So we've introduced primary colors, and the reference to Legos is not unintentional. There's a sense here that this building is put together in pieces almost Lego-like, which we think will relate to the students. The building will be brightly colored on all of the second floor. We'll have this assemblage of colored fiber cement panels, which will be in gray and then the primary colors. The building has a canopy both on the front and the back, which provides cover for the entry stairs and for the entry ramps. The building is 100% ADA accessible. That canopy, the columns and the fascia will be a brilliant yellow, and the standing seam metal roof will be a bright blue. And that's the same on all sides of the building. Moving around to the drop-off area, you can see the canopy turns the corner on the north side of the building. This is a drop-off area where people can then enter right up the ramp and into the front of the building. Another view of the front from the corner, moving now to the south a little bit, where you can see the Jefferson Street side. And then in the rear, the same motif, where the building, the entire site of the rear of the building that's not parking is consumed by the outdoor play area, and it's in the size required to provide 35 net square foot per child, with the occupancy load of 36, which is our maximum. So I don't want to get into the site issues. We're going to let the engineer deal with the site issues. But we think we've created a building that, number one, will be a beacon in the community. We think it's a building that the students will relate to. We really want the young children to relate to it, not so much adults like us. We want it to be a place the kids like to go. And we think we've achieved that. We think this will be positive, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I'm sorry, Mr. Carlich, before you continue, let's mark the rendering package as A2.
Can you identify what A1 was, Steve?
Was it A1?
Yeah, what do you want to call it?
Was A1 the plans? or-
Architectural plan.
The architectural plans and elevations.
Dated 4/20/21, is that correct?
8/10/21.
8.
And they also include elevations, which,
Okay,
in a roof plan, which I didn't want to show.
That's fine.
The colored elevations.
and A2, what will we call that?
There are 4 colored renderings showing the elevations of the building.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
And one more thing I'd like to mention, I forgot. We have a placeholder on here for signage. The area that's shown here is the area that's permitted by the ordinance. The actual signage is yet to be determined because Interfaith Neighbors is currently in a fundraising drive, and we expect that someone will step up, and this provides an opportunity for naming rights. So that actual signage will probably be the name of a benefactor at some point in time, but it will not exceed the allowable signage area per your ordinance. And in fact, even though this shows as a placard, I expect that we'll use pin-mounted letters.
Yeah.
So it'll be in this area, and it'll be pin-mounted letters, and it will comply with the ordinance for area of the signage, which is to be determined.
Does that box represent 40 square feet?
Yes, that's.
It does?
square feet.
Thank you, Mr. Carlich. I have a question about, on this elevation, you're showing a window in this left corner here, and on your floor plan, it's not shown. Is that just because of where you drew your cut line? So in A1,
Here?
yeah, that's not showing up on your A1 floor plan. Is your cut line just below that because it's a higher window in your mechanical space?
Yeah, no, that window is actually over here. Window should be moved. Is this
So,
the one you're referring to?
yeah, in your renderings, you're showing a window in this bottom left-hand corner, am I correct?
Yeah, that would be here, but there won't be a window in the mechanical room.
So on the rendering, it should be struck.
There's a double window right there,
Understood. But that's also being shown.
as shown on the plan.
So can you just show us once again where is the double window going to be?
It's gonna be right, well, you can't see it.
It's in
behind
the
tree.
other one, you can see it. Yeah, so you're
Here
showing,
It is here. There's a double window here, this window will not exist.
okay.
That's actually the mechanical room right there.
So then, could you go back to your A1 architectural plan?
Oh.
Is that like a service counter that the receptionist is sitting at?
Sitting at.
Okay.
This is a counter where
Got
you
it.
will announce yourself, who you are.
That's not a door
receptionist will have to-
threshold there. It's a counter,
It's a
not a
counter,
door
yeah.
threshold. Right, okay, got it.
It's a control point. We don't want anyone
Understood.
passing beyond this point without being buzzed into the building.
Just a question. So then my final question is, I appreciate when we first received the information package that all we had was the black and white rendering. So seeing the amount of color and sort of vibrance applied to the facade is much appreciated. I'm curious if you considered how some of that might be applied as well, specifically to the entrance doors, to make that part of the focal point of the ground floor.
Well, we were intending the entrance doors to be all glass so that you have that visual communication from the inside to the outside.
Agreed.
It's possible, though, that for example, the mullion color, the windows, the doors, the framing can be a painted kind of
Yeah,
finish.
I think anything
in a
that,
vibrant color.
yeah, anything that draws attention to the front door and ties the,
We'd be
yeah,
very
I
willing
think
to
would
do
be
that, yes.
welcome to make
Good idea.
the entrance come through a little more. The other doors, the emergency doors, you might just want to,
This might end up being a bright blue framing. which I
right,
think
yeah.
is
So if you
fine.
have some motif that carries around, using that on specifically the entry doors, I think would be quite welcome.
Will you be going through the report, or will somebody else be going through the report, the planner's report?
I can go through it if you'd like.
Yes, because we're looking for answers for anything that doesn't conform. So that's quite a few things that we need to go through.
All right, the first one.
And if the engineer has to go through some of it, just let us know that the engineer will cover that.
The first item mentioned here is the off-street parking requirement, and we're gonna let our engineer do it.
Okay, that's fine.
Why don't we get the engineering testimony on, and then we'll go through the thing.
Okay, because we have to finish yours, get all questions, public, finish yours, Mr. Hvac, and then you guys can come together. It's okay.
Could
Go
I
ahead.
ask you a question about
Go for it.
the building? I appreciate the color rendering, it's very helpful.
Yeah, and we're only kidding about the grill
I
comment.
know. I was just looking for an architectural word that
Yeah, right.
wouldn't be too long-winded. So, is the color for the panels integral to the panel, or is that an applied color?
Now, we're planning on using a Nishiha fiber cement panel, so it's an integral color in the fiber cement.
That's my question.
Does anybody else have any other questions before we actually get to the dual answering of the letter?
Yeah, just one quick question. 2 stories on a slab, no crawl space, no cellar, no basement, no substructure.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, because knowing the old building, it flooded.
Slab on grade.
Okay.
One question. I realize it's only 2 stories, but was there any thought to putting in an elevator?
Well, again, we're trying to achieve this building within a budget, and the elevator cost is one that might be prohibitive. It's not required because our floor area is less than 3,000 square feet, so we've opted not to have an elevator.
All right, I just thought with young children and moving them around, it might be more accessible and elevated.
I think that there are only gonna be 10 children on the upper level, and that it's only one floor up, and they're the older toddlers, so the idea that they can move up and down the stairs is not prohibitive. In any case, we've opted not to include an elevator.
I do have another question, and about the mechanicals and HVAC.
Yeah, we have a mechanical room inside where we'll have probably hot water heaters, but the HVAC will be handled with packaged rooftop units.
Okay.
They'll be relatively small units. We'll probably have 4 units in the 2.5 ton to 3 ton range, so there'll be residential size condensers and they'll be rooftops. And they'll be mounted near the center of the roof. There is a 2-foot parapet, so that your cutoff line of being able to see them, you're gonna have to be several blocks away to be able to see these residential scale condensers on the roof. And then you'll only be able to see the top of the minimum.
Right, so we don't have any plan for that, right? Because I don't see any rooftop.
No, we don't have it
Condensers.
located yet. We haven't engaged a mechanical engineer yet. I'm just telling you that will be our approach. We expect to have as many as 4 rooftop condenser units on the roof with the air handlers in the ceiling space. So, again, these are relatively small. This is only a 4,800 square foot building. So if we had 4 units, they'd be relatively low tonnage. They're going to be relatively compact. They're not big monster items that'll be up there.
Any other meters or equipment, mechanicals going to be on the outside of the building?
Well, we'll have to have meters once we get working with utilities. And, the electric company's going to require the meter on the outside. The gas company's going to require the meter on the outside. We'll have to locate those as we go with the utilities.
And when you locate them and place them, you'll have no problem screening them.
We'll do our best to screen them, yes.
Okay.
Yes, we're gonna require that they get scrubbed.
If just or maybe a question, or since the mechanical room is over on the corner by the parking lot, would that be the logical location where those would be?
Probably going to want to be in that area, yes.
So they could be oriented to the inboard side of the building if not necessary?
We could even create a little niche so that they don't project onto the sidewalk, maybe. We might have to do something there. We'll do our best. We don't have a lot of, when it comes to the gas company and the electric company, they basically tell you where the meter goes. We can fight all we want, but you rarely win those battles. But we'll do our best.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Go ahead.
I just want, what about roof leaders?
Yeah, we don't show the leaders in the rendering, but there will be scuppers. There'll be 2 scuppers. They're shown in the elevations. And the water will be aluminum leaders, and they'll feed into a dry well, which the engineer will address.
What color will they be?
Probably a bright color. We'll highlight.
Bright blue?
Red or blue, I would guess. Or yellow. So, do you want to go through the planner's comments?
Hang on, both of you are going to do it together. I'd rather have Mr. Hvac testify first. So let's get through the questions first here. So, planning board members or professionals, any other questions at this moment? To the architect? No? Any members of the public? Any questions? No? Okay, thank you. Next.
Now call Peter Hvac.
Okay.
I'm ready. Please raise your right hand. I swear testimony about giving this matter with the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please state your name for the record, spell it.
Peter R. Hvac, A-V-A-K-I-A-N.
Mr. Brown.
Madam Chair, Mr. Hvac is well known to the board. Can we
Yes.
accept
Let's
his
move on.
testimony as expert?
We love it.
Thank you.
I'm, just so for the record, I'm a licensed professional engineer, professional planner, professional land surveyor in the state of New Jersey.
Would you describe for the board your involvement with this project?
Sure. Know interfaith neighbors well. I lived in Allenhurst for 35 years with John Mamora, former executive director. Know Paul well. and Steve as well. And Hunt and I serve in the capacity of professionals for the Deal Lake Commission together. And so we know the area, we know the need, we know the city, and it really was a perfect fit for us to provide professional engineering services for this project.
Would you describe the engineering on this site?
Sure. Fairly simple presentation. As you heard from Mr. Carlich, the building is set basically in the square foot area. The outside area is set in the square foot area. So our focus was really on incorporating access to the property, parking, ingress and egress, and some drainage issues. This is the existing facility. Just want to describe one thing that didn't come through testimony previously. The brick building on this drawing, which is an existing survey of property, was the former daycare center that's been out of use for a few years. And there was an outdoor area that had a wood fiber surface that was obviously used for a play area. That encroached significantly onto the adjacent property, which were the athletic fields. That is entirely going to be removed, and all improvements will be on this property, which is a fairly significant benefit, although I don't believe it affected the use of those playing fields.
Peter, can we identify that as A3 as your site plan?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
This is the site plan drawing with the building focused on the property. The outdoor play area below, ingress from the alleyway, one way in and one way through. So I'll briefly describe the use and the access of the facility. The area of the property is approximately 8,800 square feet. The daycare facility, as you know, is two-story with the utility room interior, and the utility room is depicted in the upper right-hand corner of our site plan drawing. Proposed 6 parking spaces and a drop-off area. I think maybe I'll show them so it's easier to understand. Jefferson Avenue is on the left side, Atkins Avenue is on the top. It's in the northeast corner of that quadrant, that intersection. Little alleyway coming through on the north side of the property. You'd access the parking lot by coming through the alleyway, which is paved, one way in and come through the parking lot. Drop-off area to the left adjacent to the building, adjacent to the canopy area, and parking for 4 vehicles on the north side and 2 more vehicles back in adjacent to the outdoor play area. 1 handicap accessible space. There was a comment, I know we're going to get to review comments, but I'll make this one in particular. There was a very good comment in the planner's report regarding the possibility of relocating the handicap spaces to another area immediately adjacent to the building. And we really tried to do that, but the site is so tight that these spaces are an 8-foot parking space and an 8-foot crosshatched accessible space, 16 feet in width. The parking requirements are 9 by 18, so that would require 2 more feet, and we couldn't squeeze those 2 feet in for the regular parking spaces here, so we thought it would be best to leave them where they are, but we can still discuss that issue. Drop-off area is wide enough for a vehicle to come in. The intent here is employee parking will come in, utilize the parking spaces before any child comes to the site. So there will be no conflict between the use of the parking spaces and the use of the drop-off area. The intent is not for parents or drivers to come in and park and let the kids out. The intent is for the vehicles to come in, drop off the students or the children, and to leave the site. So there should be no interaction between parking in the parking spaces and the use of the drop-off area. Aside from that, configuration is one way out onto Atkins Avenue, and then the vehicles can leave in that direction. The drainage is really accepted to take the roof drainage and run into, I'll show you on a separate plan so you can see the damage done to the pavers. The downspout to be connected, one in the northeast corner of the building, one in the northwest corner of the building. Will run across the parking field into a dry well, which is under the crosshatched area of the handicap space. Another one across here, there. And it'll accommodate all the flow generated from the roof areas. All of the runoff from the parking lot will be directed to the adjacent roadways, and there's a drainage inlet at the corner of Atkins Avenue and the alleyway that will accept gutter flow from the parking lot drainage. Street trees are proposed along Atkins Avenue. There are 2. We have 2 street trees along Atkins Avenue. Along Jefferson, there's no room. The sidewalk area goes immediately to the property line and terminates at the curb line, so it's all concrete. There's no room for street trees. I don't know if you want them there, but we wouldn't recommend putting any street trees on Jefferson simply because it's a pedestrian corridor. We're going to replace the sidewalk along the entire frontage of the building on Jefferson Avenue side. And we have a note on the plans as recommended that any other sidewalks found in disrepair will be improved as well. We also proposed a row of inkberries between the parking field and the playground, and a row along the back edge of the parking lot and the northwest corner of the parking lot. Which kind of leads me to a comment made, which is a good one, in one of the reports, which we really should address before we go to the reports, and it has to do with the traffic aisle width, the minimum traffic aisle width. When you park 90-degree cars, so you come in and you make a turn and park perpendicular to the curb line, as these 4 spaces do here. Your regulations say a minimum aisle width of 23 feet. We have 22 feet here, and in order to accommodate that, we're going to do 2 things. We don't want to have a violation of that number because it brings up issues that aren't necessary. And this building is 8 feet off the property line. We proposed 8 inches, I'm sorry, thank you. We propose to move that on the property line, so the building face is on the property line, which will gain a little bit of space. We also have a 3-foot space between the parking lot and the property line, which will be for ground plantings where the inkberries would go. We propose to shorten that by at least 6 to 8 inches. So we'll gain approximately 1.5 feet. We can gain a little more if you want to count an overhang for the vehicles and shortening a little bit of the drop-off area, which we really don't want to do. We could have anywhere from 23 to 24 feet of aisle width. So what we're saying is we want to comply with that aisle width dimension. We don't want to have any deviation from that. It could be considered a design waiver, but we'll look at it so we don't have to consider it at all. We do have lighting on a separate plan. I had a couple fellows in the office do the lighting plan, and I'll be honest with you, normally I primarily practice municipal engineering and I represent boards, and one of my key issues with the site development plan is to make sure that the site lighting doesn't spill onto adjacent properties. And when I looked at this, I saw a little spillage on the east side and a little bit on the north side. And at first I'm saying, well, why'd you do that? Why don't you just like put a cutoff on the light so it doesn't occur? And the thought was that it would provide a little better light control and site control, if you will. But I still think we should have a rear cutoff. So we have a light in this corner. I'll put a rear cutoff on it so it brings those foot candles down to close to 0 as possible. We have a light in this corner. We'll do the same thing and bring those foot candles in. And we have a light over here next to the play area. So our intent is to ensure that the adjacent properties are protected from light spillage from the site as well. No other landscaping is proposed at this time. I know there were some comments on landscape improvements on the site. I don't really think there's room for them, but we can certainly address that during the comments. The outdoor play area is approximately 1,700 square feet. It's intended to be a rubberized play surface that we use typically in playgrounds for kids of this age. And the dry well, as I said, accommodates the roof runoff, primarily to accommodate the additional coverage by the building and parking lot. An increase of about 25%, but still lower than what's allowed. So maximum coverage is 65%. And all of that runoff will be accommodated in that dry well. One of the comments we'll also address in the reports is a soil log, which we'll have done to ensure that the soil is permeable enough to accept that drainage. There was a refuse area that was indicated as not being understood where it is. There's a trash area enclosed in a fence in this real corner. Don't know how it's going to be picked up. It could be in cans, it could be dropped off, it could be, however, it's easy for the owner-operator to use. But that's where the refuse area is. Other comments we'll address as we go through the reports, if that's okay with the board.
Yes. Can we go through, I see that we have those couple of parking spaces. Where do you anticipate the staff to be parking?
The 4 parking spaces, I don't actually know the number of employees or staff that are going to be used, but or that are going to be here at the building. But these 4 spaces, one of which is handicap accessibility, could be kept open. But these 4 spaces and these 2 spaces will be utilized for staff parking.
So where will the rest of the staff park? Because you're going to have more than 6 people. Just for the classrooms, you're going to have more than 6.
I'd have to ask the operator.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, we're gonna have to know a number so
Right.
that we can calculate what, if any, the variance or exception would be.
Right, because there obviously there are certain rules that exist on how many teachers or people that are watching the children have to be there. You have a nurse, you have a receptionist, so you know that's 6 real fast. So if we can do that at some point, that'd be fine.
Dr. Eno has done that analysis.
Okay.
And our peak staffing at any point in time during the course of the operating hours in the first year is 5 and will grow to 6 as the population.
Okay, so 6 is going to be your number. Okay. All right. So at that point, we'll still need one. So at that point, you'll still need one. Somebody will have to park on the street for that one person, right? Assuming that the handicapped accessible unit may or may not be used.
Right. Right.
So you'll still have some overflow into the streets. Okay. Anybody else have any other questions before we get to the reports?
Since
Sure.
the insight report is definitely engineering
Yes.
or in nature, that would more probably be for Mr. Hvac to address any of those comments as it goes to the architect, I would assume.
Will that work?
That's absolutely fine.
Okay, let's go. Let's go with that.
Yeah, let's go with
I
insights
don't know how you
report
want to do this.
September
How do you
30th,
want me to do this?
2021.
Just go.
Do you need it? Do you need a copy?
No, we're fine. Thank you.
Just go right to it.
Why don't we mark that as exhibit B1?
B1. Yeah, obviously go through the salient portions that.
Certainly.
Right, only the ones that.
I can do it very quickly because
Okay.
I did it myself. On the completeness, we are absolutely willing to accommodate 1, 2, 3. There are no easements, so item 4 on completeness is not applicable. We do show the lighting. The lighting plan does not provide lighting levels on the north, on the southwest. That's going to be accommodated by the architect. That's the canopy area in the front.
Okay, so that's the canopy. Okay.
So that will be accommodated on the architectural plan. And 6 and 7.
Excuse me, it's on the lighting, so you're not going to do a composite lighting level for the whole site using those
We
those
did
other canopy lights?
our lighting for the parking lot. The lighting in question is in this area, and that'll be accommodated by the architect under the covered entry area.
So what we normally look for is that all lighting is in a composite fashion.
When he does that design as a condition, if you want to, we can put it on our engineering plan to show that as well. We would do that. As a completeness, it was indicated that soil logs can be waived, but we would like soil logs and permeability test results prior to final approval, and that's acceptable. Obviously, we will do that. And number 8 on completeness, the description of the proposed operations in detail is provided by the owner. Under the development review, as luck would have it, the first comment is an architectural one, but we'll move on from that. Item 10 on the report, as I indicated, the lighting plan will be revised to show a rear cutoff on all freestanding lights. That'll protect the neighboring properties from light infiltration. And the type of lighting and fixture are shown as a detail on the detail sheet. New utility connections are proposed. I didn't testify to that, but I will show you on the utility plan. All the utilities are in Atkins Avenue. They're all going to come in directly. It goes gas, water, and sanitary store. All 3 will come right into the utility room. So the utility room is placed at the exact right location. So all of those underground utilities can come directly into the building. Comment on the grading of the driveway onto Atkins Avenue being about 0.5%, which is a little on the flat side. It is on the flat side. We tried to raise the property up, but raising the property would have required a retaining wall along the edge of the playground area. We wanted to stay away from that. So we prefer, we'll look at the grading. If we can raise it slightly to provide a little more positive runoff toward Atkins, we will. But we want to stay away from having to put a retaining wall adjacent to the playground area.
If I may, on that one?
Certainly.
Is there a proposed concrete apron there? Because that might help the situation. Just
At what location?
in the driveway exit onto Atkins.
I think maybe that would help the situation a little bit to make sure we have a positive drainage from the site into the gutter line. So we'll do that as a condition if you'd like. This area here we're referring to, the full width of the drop-off area and the 23-foot wide traffic aisle from the property line to the curb line on Atkins Avenue will be a concrete apron. When you pave, you don't need to know this, but as an engineer we do, as the mayor you do, when you pave using bituminous concrete or asphalt, it's much more difficult to get a fine grade to the flow than when you put concrete down. So if we pave to the edge of concrete, the apron will ensure that the flow goes out to the gutter line and to the adjacent inlet. So we'll do that. 13, 14, 15, the pavement notes on the plan on the construction process, concrete sidewalk and apron complying with the ordinance will all be complied with. I don't know the answer, but the owner would on the 1 week of recyclable material. I can't imagine them requiring more than what's provided for recycling, but that can be addressed also. And then we have issues to discuss with stormwater management. We are going to comply with most all of your comments. The one I request a waiver from, and one I will show you how we're going to comply, are 17E and 17H. E is a groundwater mounding analysis, and H is the dry well overflow. And I also has to be complied with. But with regard to groundwater mounding analysis, that's a hydraulic evaluation which addresses adverse hydraulic conditions. It means that if you're infiltrating into the groundwater, you want to be sure you don't affect or you're not affected by the seasonal groundwater table, You don't affect flooding of basements on adjacent properties. You don't affect impact on a sanitary sewer system. None of that is affected here. None of that is here. It's an extremely minor volume of water that we're accommodating in the dry well, and we request a waiver for just having to make that analysis as an exercise because it's really not necessary. But what we will do, and I think it was a good comment, because I like to see this as well, when the roof runoff comes and ties into the dry well for the two locations on the building, we'll have an emergency overflow in case the dry well goes up with too much water or you have an issue with maintenance. There'll be a small PVC pipe run to the curb line, make sure it's accommodated by a PVC sleeve and through the curb, and have that runoff directly into the storm drainage inlet. Actually, it won't have to run into the curb, it'll run right into the inlet because the inlet's at that corner. So we agree to that. Yeah. So thank you for that comment. Seasonal high groundwater elevations, when we do the soil log, we'll add that to the dry well system and verify that that's acceptable. On page 5, the parking spaces, 5+1 per worker are required. We'll have to get a little more testimony from the owner operator on that. And we did discuss number 19, which is the 23-foot driveway aisle, which we will ensure we will comply with, so that we don't have any deviations from your design requirements.
I just one thing that you'd mentioned about the recycling. I just noticed on the plans that we don't have any place where it's being stored that we can see. Because we have a mechanical storage area that kind of goes through the reception area. So I didn't know if that's where recycling was going to be, or any trash. Is that where it's going to be held up?
Just the out.
The intention is to have 2 large robo-cams that will be outside of the building in the fenced area at the rear.
So it's outside.
One of which will be for trash, one of which will be for recyclables.
Okay.
We show them right
We'll
here.
get the biggest robo-cams with wheels that we can get.
Mhm.
And it's in a
That's how
fenced
we
area.
get trash and recyclables.
So I just want to try to follow that. So there's these 2 cans and they're as big as you can get, right? They're not in an enclosure, they're sitting in the play area?
No, they're not in the play area. Again, we can jump back up here, but the fence runs around here, so that these, you can't see on this, the trash is outside of the fenced-in play area. The fence runs around the play area, but there's a sidewalk that connects here that the trash cans sit outside of the play area, and then there's a gate in the fence that goes into the play area beyond that. They're not in the play area.
That makes things clearer.
Okay.
So that is shown on the site plan drawing.
Yeah. Now I see where it is. Okay.
The final.
If I could just.
Oh, sure.
Ask for clarification on number 19. You're saying you will provide the 23-foot aisle, and then follow-up question, where is that going to be measured to?
We're going to measure from the start of the curb line. We will have an 18-foot deep, 90-degree parking space. From the edge of that space to the edge of the drop-off pickup zone will be 23 feet.
Okay.
So the driveway aisle dimension will be 23 feet, no less than 23 feet.
Okay.
And again, we'll accommodate that by shifting the building slightly to the property line on the south side and shifting the curb line slightly into the side buffer on the north side. So considerations on page 5, I did discuss this briefly. We recommend leaving the ADA parking space as it is shown on our site plan, simply because of dimensional issues on the property. We will show existing contours, we'll show spot grades.
Sorry to interrupt. Number 20.
Yes.
If the ADA space is staying there, the accessible route is essentially.
We'll cross-hatch that.
Across the drive aisle.
Right.
Is the intention for someone to enter into the right of way and take that curb ramp, or is there going to be another curb ramp in the loading zone?
I think it would be easier if it was one access route. So probably the best way to do it is you're parking your van here, you let if it's a motor operated van lift, it comes out into the crosshatch space. The easiest thing would be to come right up onto the right-of-way curb and come right into the building in the frontage. So in any event, however it's done, we'll have to crosshatch that area to provide easy access from the handicap space to the building.
A crosswalk provided?
Yes,
Okay. And additional spot grading?
yes.
For the whole accessible route?
So we will basically accommodate, with the exception of the location of the spaces, we'll accommodate all comments in item 20.
Okay.
Spot grading, cross slope, and the crosswalk location. We'll show the contours, we'll show spot grades, top of curb, bottom of curb. You should know the vehicle flow. We don't have a problem with stacking of cars in the event that more than 2 cars came onto the site at any one time. There is stacking space in the one-way aisle to the alleyway, and even in the alleyway if that should occur, which is kind of remote. Again, additional grading will be provided in the drop-off area. Curbing along the frontage of the property, we're going to review that. I think we can make some accommodations on that. That number 25 is also a good comment. Monolithic curb and gutter, where it's poured uniformly, the curb and gutter together, is proposed within the right-of-way, and a simple curb is proposed on site without the concrete gutter. So we'll accommodate comments in number 25. Street trees being proposed or shown. There is a tree on the driveway entrance that's existing now that has to be removed. We'll make sure that's shown on the plan so that there's no question about that. Item 27 will comply with test pits. Planting and light poles in the city right away. Out of the need for space, I do believe that these 5 shrubs, inkberries, maybe just on or just over the property line, and the 2 street trees are in the municipal right of way. If that necessitates action by the governing body, we certainly would do that, but typically with the approval of a site plan, we would show those landscaping improvements to be within the right of way.
Says here a light pole is going to be.
That's going to be moved. We will not have any lighting in the right of way. Location and screening of mechanical equipment, rooftop, was testified to by Steve. And we can talk about the utility connections at the appropriate time, which we will do. And the architect can address item 31 if that's necessary. All other approvals obviously will be met, including application to the county planning board, Freehold Soil Conservation, and other city approvals if necessary. So I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have any. Relatively small, uniform, going to be very manageable site once the improvements are made.
Any want to have any questions? Any of the planning board members or our professionals?
How wide is the drop-off zone?
I think a minimum of 8 feet, but there is a little, you know, you have, it's not, Steve, was the intent for one? No, drop off.
Yeah, I think it's best if it is.
I know, right?
From the building face, there's a 5-foot wide sidewalk that's under a canopy. Adjacent to that is an 8-foot wide crosshatched area from the property line along, or right-of-way line of Atkins Avenue, all the way back to the back line of the building. The intent is for a vehicle to come in off the alleyway, come in one way, drive into that crosshatched area, drop off phase 1 and 2, so that will all be crosshatched to width of 8 feet.
Is that a full-height curb along the drop-off zone, along the covered walkway?
It should be expressed. I think it should be depressed because it's just easier, much easier access, especially if youngsters are being dropped off there. And there's no problem with drainage in that area or draining across from that area. So from the curb line of the walkway on the north side, on the northwest corner, which is Atkins, all the way down the building face should be what we'll call 3/4 of an inch, half inch to 3/4 of an inch curb face. It won't be a full curb face.
Anyone else?
Does that require then some sort of protection for the structure, the canopy structure, or the columns that come down, or anything like that? Bollards, or?
We will have bollards to protect the columns.
With exciting colors?
I like that.
More colors to work with. So.
As a matter of fact, all of this bright, vivid color testimony is leading me to think that maybe I should change the way I do engineering site plans because it's so bland. So I may brighten our engineering plans. up a little
Yellow
bit.
traffic paint's not.
I was thinking maybe drainage can be bright blue or green, so we'll work on that. But we can, yeah, seriously, that's a good question and a good comment. We will put a drop curb in there for easy access and put bollards in to protect the columns that are there to support the canopy above the crosswalk.
Just a point, back to the pedestrian and the barrier-free accessible route, that if you're doing that, you could actually have a ramp that aligns with the ramp that's directly across, rather than having people to go out on.
Could, we'll look
the
at that.
sidewalk.
Yeah, we'll look at that and do it the best route possible.
I have a small concern, and number one, I think it's a good project. I think it's definitely a project that's needed in the Southwest. I know Interfaith builds beautiful projects and always have been people of their word, but just one thing I can't wrap my hands around is like, okay, so we got the principal, we got the nurse, we got the receptionist, and then we got 36 children between a month and 3 years. That means 3 more employees, each one of those is handling 12 people. I want to meet these 3 saints. So as much as you said you've been approved by Division of Local, your youth services in Trenton and everything, just get us something to that effect saying that's enough staff to man this.
Yeah, we have a staffing plan, John, and we'll be happy to submit that.
Right, and this
Okay.
will be, and this will be licensed, so you have to adhere to certain things.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we open it up to the public?
I just,
Go ahead.
since Doug brought up the lighting, I'd just like to
Go
follow
for
up
it.
with the lighting comments that I had in here, and that is that we don't really have what the proposed lighting levels are going to be. We have.
The ones from the south and the southwest, I think it was, right? Only those.
We don't really know. The way the lighting's drawn here, it's drawn overlapping, but it's not a composite that actually shows point by point what the lighting levels are going to be in the parking lot or outside of the area. We know there's going to be spillage based on the existing configuration, but we don't know what the existing or the proposed light levels are going to be within the parking lot. Nor do we understand the uniformity of the lighting in the parking lot because we don't have those statistics.
Do you just want foot candle lines? Because the foot candle numbers are shown. We can just show foot candle lines. Do you have the?
I can see the foot candle lines, but they're overlapping and they're not tied together. They're not modeled. Normally, there's a point by point that is modeled on the basis of the IS files of the lights, and we can understand what the minimum lighting is, what the maximum lighting is, what the uniformity ratios are, and also where the spillage is going to occur and to what degree that spillage is bright. So saying that, can't say anything about the lighting plan in terms of whether or not it's too bright, or
Okay.
too dim, or not uniform enough.
So that's a requirement that we have to have. Okay. Any other questions for the moment?
Is there any, so with regard to the outdoor play area, is there any requirement for any shading or tree coverage or anything like that?
That was something I wanted to bring up as well.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you're eliminating 2 trees and perhaps along the Jefferson Avenue frontage, you could find space for, on your own property, 2 small tree wells.
In the playground area?
adjacent to the sidewalk, to the playground area, you know, something just to provide both a little shade and a little, you know, street tree action. I guess I'm looking at the rendering, but the tree that's shown is on the adjacent property, correct?
Well, the tree that's on the adjacent property can remain.
No, correct, that's not what
The
it,
problem we have with the play area is that we are right at the square footage required by DCFS in order to have 36 children on the site.
understood.
So if we take some of that play area away for plantings, we then don't comply with the DCFS requirements.
Understood.
It was our intention to comply 100%, so.
So just to be clear about that, so the introduction of a tree trunk actually diminishes the area?
I don't know if they would deduct that, but.
One of the trends we're seeing, we see a lot of daycare and other places like that, they're usually shading, they're creating shade in like half of their area to try to provide some relief. I don't know to what extent the existing tree on the exterior of the site would provide that type of shade relief. But we're seeing that, particularly when it's coming from the south, that's the south side.
While shade would be a benefit, surely, I would be myself concerned about potential safety issues if we were to put trees inside the playground. You got 36 kids have to run around, I would be against that.
But is it, I guess that the question really comes to is, are there any regulations regarding shading of a playground? Because I'm guessing there should be.
There are none in the manual. The manual simply stipulates 35 net square foot per child. The irony here is a significant portion of these children are infants, so they are not going to be outside running around. It would seem like, I mean, I understand the safety concern, but it would seem likely that if you have infants, they are not necessarily going to be outside of the play area anyway. They're either napping or they're fussing, one or the other, and somebody's
Right.
dealing with it. So.
But once kids start
But in order to
walking,
comply, and we've already submitted this plan to DCFS, and they've already reviewed and approved it, so we would have to go back and make sure that we could add any other elements into that play area.
but even if you create like one of those sails that are up on top that you just connect part of it to a pole somewhere, and it's like just to give them some relief, because kids cannot, and adults cannot be in a playground in the sun.
We can look at a shade structure that would be
Something.
a pencil structure on a couple of columns, and then we could wrap the columns with protective padding so that it wouldn't be a safety problem.
But I mean, I just find it hard to believe that there's no rules around that. But that's not for me to say. Okay. Can we? Anybody else before we open it up to the public? Go for it.
Clarification, you talked about screening for the exterior mechanicals. Is there a certain type that we can agree upon in terms of whether it's going to be a physical structure or plantings?
They're going to be residential sized units. We haven't designed the MEP systems yet. There'll either be mini splits with small condensers that are vertically stacked about 30 inches tall, or there'll be conventional DX cooling systems with small condensers that are in either a round or a box type format.
Okay.
Residential, I mean, that tall, sitting on the middle of the roof behind a 2-foot parapet, you have to be.
But what about, I'm talking about the gas meters and electric meters.
Again, there will be a gas meter on the building, and there will be an electric meter on the building, as there is on every building. Until we get engaged with the utilities, I don't know exactly where they are.
Right.
But it's likely they're gonna be at that northwest corner somewhere.
Right. But the question is the shielding, not that they'll exist,
Right.
or where they'll exist. What's the shielding? Are there going to be plants? Are there going to be, what's going to shield it?
Well,
You had suggested some sort of an element, it sounded like an architectural element.
I was suggesting that we might recess them into a little niche. I don't know that you're allowed to cover either of those meters by utility standards. I don't know that they can be concealed. I think they have to be in plain view on the side of the building. Unfortunately, just went through this in the building in Long Branch, and JCP&L wouldn't budge an inch. They said this is where they're going to, JCP&L said this is where they're going to go, and this is where they're going to go.
That's not the question. There are many buildings that we see, many plans that we see, and they have maybe gates, maybe some plantings, something around it. So it's not totally hidden.
If I could recess it in a niche and put some kind of an iron gate just to hide it,
Yeah.
I would do that. We would be amenable to
Is
that.
that okay?
Yeah, I'm just thinking ahead in terms of, if there was an approval tonight, what to look for in terms of.
Understood. Well, we would put that into, as a requirement. Can we open it up to the public before we go through the planner's report? Any public questions? Okay, let's go to the planner's report. Then the two of you can, because fortunately, actually, we've answered a number of them
I
already.
think so.
A
So-
series of them, yes.
Yes, the majority we have. So let's go through,
We've answered the
Well-
questions about off-street parking, correct?
yes,
Well, no. Well, I guess it was testified to that there's going to be, how many employees?
6.
6, so your total parking requirement then is 11.
So that would mean that the balance of the employees would have to park on-street parking.
That's what we have to state.
But I'm just getting at the requirement, just so we know what the requirement is, so that it sounds like there's relief that is required because you only have
We only have 6 spaces, correct?
Can I have a comment here? We have been advised by Michelle Alonso that if we have an on-site pickup and drop-off area, the minimum 5-space requirement for pickup and drop-off is waived. And so all of the spaces that are currently showing on the plan can be available for staff parking.
Right.
That's what we were advised on Michelle.
Right, but that's still not 11. Or how many did you mention? 12?
Again, the staffing plan doesn't call for there to be 11, it calls for there to be 6 employees.
Correct, but there are certain regulations we have to adhere to. Right, Michael?
Yes, and I haven't had that conversation with Michelle regarding the requirement.
As a matter of fact, it was Michelle who suggested that we have an
That's
on-site
right.
pickup and
Mhm.
drop-off location so that we could, that minimum 5-space requirement for pickup and drop-off would be waived.
All right, so that's good. That's an open question that's going to have to come back. That's going to have to come back, as well as the lighting plan's going to have to come back. If we can just run through these other questions so that we know what else has to come back. Because we're running close to the time where we have to move to our next application. So let's just move through these. So the off-site parking is a concern. What about the parking lot shade tree? We talked about that.
There's no shade
no
trees
shade
proposed,
trees.
no shade trees
Just
proposed.
the ink berries.
Okay?
Right, and that's represented on the exhibit that's shown on the screen now, that's the location of the
Yeah.
proposed inkberry hollies?
That's the next comment, parking lot plantings, and that's those
Right.
inkberry hollies, which will buffer the parking on the north
Right.
and against the play area.
So the calculation has to be done to determine whether or not that equates to 10% or not, so that we know if relief is necessary. Do you know if it's 10%? Have you calculated it?
I haven't calculated.
Okay, so we need to have the calculation so we know
We
whether or
need to have
not
that.
relief is required. On page 4 of 8, 2.6, we just discussed site lighting.
Well, I should also add that we will be providing lights under all of the canopies, so that all of that area under the canopies will be illuminated. And we can provide the fixture to Peter, and he can provide a photometric for you.
Terrific.
Okay, so that's coming
exactly
back.
right. We talked about refuse and recycling.
Mhm.
We didn't talk about fencing, chain link fence. It looked on your rendering like it was going to be some sort of a vinyl clad.
It's not a chain link fence, it's a painted aluminum fence, and the detail is on the site drawings.
Okay, it's an aluminum picket.
4-foot high aluminum, painted aluminum vertical picket fence
Mhm.
pursuant to the detail that's on the
Okay,
sheet 505.
okay, great. Thank you. We talked about signs, 2.9. You're going to comply with the signs and determine how the graphics are going to be later. 2.10, we've talked about mechanical equipment. On page 5 of 8, 2.11, street trees, we talked about that. I don't think it makes any sense, and I'm not going to speak for the board, but I don't see any room for the street trees over on Jefferson. So-
There's no way to put them there unless
So there'll be
they-
the two on Atkins.
Correct.
And 3.0, 3.1 bicycle parking.
We actually don't want to have a bike rack, and the reason is, number one, none of the children of this age group are going to be riding their bikes. And number two, we don't want to encourage teenagers to hang out here. So if there's a place to ride your bike and then leave it, it'll just encourage kids to be there, and we don't want teenage kids to be hanging out, making this a destination.
No employees are gonna ride bikes?
It might be possible that an employee might ride a bike, good point.
Right, that would be a concern also, because this Asbury Park is a city that
If we were
we
gonna
need to have at least one somewhere.
If we were gonna provide a bike rack, there is space. There is space right in this corner to provide a bike rack.
Yeah, I think 2 or 3 of those,
Yeah.
just U brackets.
Inverted U, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
inverted U.
We would agree with that.
Okay, go ahead, Michael.
So, 3.2, we talked about the drop-off and pickup. We talked about accessible parking, and we talked about the vibrant building design. So, I think that gets through the comment field.
It's brutally
Yep.
vibrant.
Brutally vibrant, thank you.
Yeah.
And then just we note for the record that there's an affordable housing fee that would be required
Yes.
as part of anything.
I frankly don't understand this.
What?
We're proposing the use of a school zone that has nothing to do with housing. We are the whole group of affordable housing.
That, I'm sorry, but that's not for us to decide. So I understand that you may have a concern about that, but that's not within our purview to say yes or no. So if there's a concern about that, that would be, I don't know if you would go to
It's a
the
law.
city or you go, it's a
state-
law.
It's a state law.
It's a state law, so,
The state law?
so I understand that there's a concern. It's not in our purview. So that we will not make any decisions regarding that.
If you want relief from that, you go to the city council and perhaps a state agency.
Yeah.
Not us.
Okay, so,
And that gets through our report, and the
That-
issues in our report.
that's great. Thank you, Michael, for walking us through that. So it sounds as though we need a couple of things to come back. And then should we go back with, do we need to be specific as to what we have to come back so that it's clear, or do you guys,
Yeah, why don't we do
Have
that
it down.
so there's no miscommunication?
right? Okay, so, Jack, do you want to do it or you want me to do it?
Well, you may have better notes. I mean, I've got a whole bunch of things. Not sure.
Okay, we're gonna come back with the point-by-point lighting that was requested. We're gonna be coming back regarding the off-street parking and what's required versus what we have. We're gonna come back with the parking lot plantings. We're gonna come back with, we said that about the lighting. We're gonna come back about where the bicycle parking is gonna be. And we're gonna come back with, I'm gonna need a little bit more about that right of way, where the landscaping is gonna go into the public right of way. I'm struggling with that one. What else do you have, Jack?
Okay, you're gonna show the door sills and window frames. Steve, I'm not sure if I can characterize it correctly in architectural terms. You're gonna add some color there. You said you were gonna add some color elements to the
entry.
entry or something, the framing or something like that?
We will.
Okay.
Alright.
Rooftop, whatever you're proposing to screen it with, just give us a note.
We're not proposing to screen the rooftops. My contention was that they are low equipment and they will not be visible unless you are a considerable distance away.
Okay.
And at that point, they're not discernible.
That's the board's call?
But
That's fine.
did you also say there's a 2-foot parapet on this
Yes.
building?
Yes.
So
Yeah, there's a
the
parapet
deck
on
of-
There's 2 foot of small parapet, so that your sight line, if you're adjacent to the building, is gonna be significantly cut off. We will agree to keep all the equipment on the center line of the roof, so it'll be cut off in terms of sight line.
What's the board's pleasure?
That's fine.
Yeah, if it's in the center,
That's fine.
that's fine.
Okay, utility meters, I don't know if you can tell us what you might do for screening?
Yeah, when you
How
come
you're gonna
back.
Address those?
When you come back.
We'll give you some kind of detail of how we're
Yep.
gonna handle it.
Site plan's gonna be revised to show a 23-foot aisle width.
Yep.
Okay, and whatever that is, the site lighting, that's gonna be revised and shown for detail so that it can make sense. Site plan, you're gonna add a concrete apron to the Atkins Avenue property, for that drainage situation that you and Doug were discussing. Encroachments we've already discussed. And just give us the approval from the state of New Jersey, and show us where it indicates that your staffing was approved and so on. Encroachments, if there are any, it's simple. Every resolution puts in it's subject to approval of the mayor and council for any encroachments into city rights of way. Because there seem to be many of them throughout this. That's it.
Peter, do you have anything to add to that?
We'll also show bollards for protection along
Okay,
the
that's
canopy.
fine.
Right, and the depressed curb along the,
Yeah, press curb, yeah, whatever those we discussed here.
And the accessible route incorporated with that depressed curb, direct accessible route.
Yeah, whatever.
All right.
Action, whatever.
Well, this is really a great project, and I thank you guys for coming in. Irina, what would be the next?
I think we need a motion to carry this, no?
Well, I need to know what the date is.
Oh, okay.
So our next available date is November 15th.
Okay. Okay, can I get is November 15th acceptable to the applicant? That's our next
Yes.
date.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so can I get a motion to carry this application without further notice
What is that?
for November 15th? Yeah, it would be a Monday.
Okay.
If I may?
Yes.
If any extension is required under the MLU, will you so extend?
We so extend.
Municipalities, nobody's around.
Do we know if that?
No, that starts on Tuesday.
Okay. All right, so can I get a motion to carry this application to November 15th without notice?
So moved.
Second.
7 PM in this room.
7 PM in this room.
Who was the second? I'm sorry.
Alexis.
Thank you. Okay, and, do you want me to take roll on?
You don't have to.
No, okay. So, motion to carry application to November 15th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank
Nope.
you. Application carries to November 15th without further notice.
Okay, can I also, while we're at it, can I get a motion to take a 5-minute break before our next applicant?
Move.
Madam Chair.
Break.
Thank you.
Make sure you send over that certification.
Okay.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
5-minute break.
5-minute break, please.
All right, thank you everyone. Let's get back. It is 8:34 PM. Mayor Delmore.
Here.
Councilwoman Yvonne Clayton. Here. Michael Manzella.
Here.
Alexis Taylor.
Here.
Eric Gallo.
Here.
Rick Lambert. I'm sorry, Rick Lambert is absent. And Barbara Krizak.
Here.
Thank you, everyone.
Can we, the next application that that's up is 1317 to 1319 Springwood Avenue.
Yes. Chairwoman, I've reviewed the submissions for jurisdictional purposes in good order. We have jurisdiction to hear this matter.
And so we're good to go there. Mr. Gallipo?
Yeah, I will be recusing myself from this application. I'm a longtime friend and neighbor of Mr. Duncan.
Okay.
And as a member of the public, would speak strongly in support.
Oh, you can come back during comment time. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Mr. Mayor and ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Kevin Kennedy. I have an office in Red Bank, and I'm very excited to be here with regard to this project. And again, it's nice to see you all live. I think it's been a while since I've been here, other than in a remote fashion. So we are very excited to be here. We find this is to be the Brother in the Blue application, 1317-1319 Springwood Avenue. We're very excited about the project. We're looking for approval to construct a mixed-use building for an artist studio, a gallery, classroom space, individual art studios, and an artist live-work unit. We think it's a really unique and interesting and awesome setup. We think it's perfect for a city like Asbury Park, which has a rich history of offering and promoting art and culture in ways that some other towns do not. We think it's perfect. It's in the Springwood Avenue redevelopment zone. We're very proud of the fact that it engages the streetscape in a very unique and obvious way. we check off many of the boxes for the Springwood Avenue redevelopment zone in terms of requirements and purposes. And I have three witnesses. I have Dr. Duncan, I have Anthony Arcolino, my architect, and Renato, our engineer. And I know our timing is limited, and Madam Chair, with your consent, I'll jump right into the first witness.
Go for it.
Sir, please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name for the record and spell it.
David Duncan, David Duncan.
All right, good evening, Doctor, and just for the record.
Let me swear in our witnesses.
Oh, sure.
Okay, Michael and Doug?
Second.
Please raise your right hands. You solemnly swear the testimony about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state your names for the record and your affiliation with the board.
Michael Sullivan, Clark Caton Hints, Board Planner.
Thank you.
Doug Clellan, Insight Engineering, Board Engineer.
Thank you. Mr. Kennedy, sorry for the
Okay,
interruption.
no, I jumped the gun. So Dr. Duncan, just why don't you briefly, we are under a time frame here in terms of, why don't you give an introduction of who you are, where you live, and your just professional credentials just right off the bat, so the planning board knows who the face of this project is.
So my name is David Duncan. I'm a resident of Asbury Park. I've had a house in Asbury Park for 10 years and have lived here now full time for the last 3 years. I took a job at Jersey Shore Medical Center, so I work here local in the area. I have a number of patients who are also Asbury Park residents. I'm a neurologist, specialized in multiple sclerosis, and I've been doing that for 30 years now. I'm originally from Indiana, and through multiple education, research things, have lived abroad and in New York and New Jersey. New Jersey for the last, since approximately 2013. Anyway, so, but my main focus has been Jersey Shore and this MS center that I'm doing there. And I plan to live in Asbury Park and retire here. I've got a lot of friends and a life I've built here. So, and one of my interests is in clay. I've been doing that for probably 10, 12 years. I've done it in a number of different studios in New York and in Harlem, in the West Village, and then more recently with La Placa, who had a clay studio on the boardwalk for a number of years. And I consider myself a potter. And I'm really in love with the idea of pottery and also the community it creates. So I think a lot of different art forms, creative individual, you're kind of in your own space, in your own head, and pottery is number one, it's a craft, and number two, there's a community involved, and the places that I've practiced, whether it was here on the boardwalk or in places in the city, in Harlem or the West Village, they also interacted with the city, and there was educational opportunities and so forth. And my idea is to bring that same kind of community clay art center here to Asbury Park, and I think the Southwest would be a great location for it.
And you know what, just for purposes of this, the applicant here in tonight is Brother in Blue LLC, and you are the managing member and the only member of that LLC, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and then just for the record, the two properties that we're talking about, Lot 41 and Lot 42, currently they're vacant, correct?
That is correct.
And I know there was a review letter that said if the approval is obtained, you would consolidate the lots, and you would have no objection to that.
No objection.
Okay. So you heard me explain the mixed-use nature of this building. Why don't you sort of go through and explain, go for the ground floor and the second floor, and what is going to be there, and what the nature of each room is, so to speak.
Right. So there'll be a main gallery space that's on the first floor as you enter, which is a gallery classroom exhibition space, which will be available to the community, I think, at large, as well as for sales of art and clay pieces that are made by either the students or by people who are working at the Clay Art Center. That can be kind of a flex space that can be available to the community at large, including art groups, educational activities, or meetings, civic organizations, business, people who may want to need this space for classes or events. There will be, in the back portion, will be the actual clay studio, which will have 6 to 8 wheels, where there will be workshops during the day where people can learn or learn different aspects of clay, more on a singular basis, can be with kids, adults, people who are retired, who want to take and have some interaction with clay, and then there will be actual classes that would happen maybe in the evening hours during the week. There'll be a kiln firing area, which will be separated from the main clay that will be secured and separate from the actual clay work area. Then you will move upstairs. There will be 3 separate rentable studios that artists preferably, I had come before the board before, I think, kind of discussing this idea, and the idea was, what's the definition of art, and how do you know what an artist is? And I thought it would be better to consolidate the ideas. I really love clay, and I make this a clay studio. There's no problem with the definition of what a clay artist is, and somebody who works with pottery or pottery. So primarily renting to people who are potters or clay art artists or artisans in these 3 studios, and they will have that space and be able to hopefully interact not only in their own studios, but the idea of creating some kind of incentive that for maybe a reduction in their subsidized rental rates, they would have to teach some classes to community or to kids, so that would make them kind of interact also with the community. And then there would also be a flex space, live, work area where a visiting artist could come and stay a limited period of time. Say if somebody wanted to come from Brooklyn or from California and they had a special kind of play technique and they wanted to bring that to Asbury Park and be here, say for the summer, or do an exhibition in the gallery, they could actually live in that space, do their art. There's an associate and be here and bring that here to the Asbury Park area. And that's the main structure. And then there's a garage which helps deal with the one of the parking spaces, but also will allow for storage and secure for things for lawn maintenance and things as far as taking care of the building. There's not much storage in the building itself, so it would allow you to have like a lawnmower or clippers or whatever you need to do to actually maintain the property, in addition to garbage being stored there.
And just in terms of the live work space unit, so it's going to be an artist who would live there?
That is correct.
And you anticipate that it would be leased on an annual basis?
Or it could be shorter too. If it's somebody who's like looking for who's only going to be coming for 3 months for the summer to do some kind of exhibition or doing a course or teaching, it could be for shorter periods. Yeah, but nothing less than a month.
And it's only one dwelling unit, correct?
That is correct.
And 1 bedroom?
It's actually a studio with an adjacent space with a slop sink.
And I know you had referenced a kiln. So just who is that open, or would be access? There would be restricted access to that?
Restricted only the people who are trained and authorized. Potters who can probably there'll be 1 or 2 designated people that will be able to actually access, load, and unload the kilns.
And that would be appropriately exhausted in accordance with construction code regulations?
OSHA standards, yes.
And what about, just for the record, is there any smoke or odor or fumes or noise associated with that?
Not more than what you would have with like a normal exhaust from a furnace, and we're going to actually vent that up to the top of the roof. So actually standards are just, it can be actually vented to the side of a building as long as it's not under a window, but we're actually going to vent it up onto and above the roof.
And I talked a little bit in the introduction about street engagement. Before we get into your operational details, talk about how you think this use and how this particular site would engage the streetscape.
Well, I think that the idea is that there will be periods of times of, number one, that it will be open during the day so people can kind of walk in. It has a very opening on the front, but also on the side. So people can actually, either from the outside or from the inside, come and actually look at people making clay. And there will be open houses that will happen to invite people to come in and see what we're doing and what we're making. So I think it will be very interactive with the street and inviting for people to come and see what we're doing inside.
And you used the word inviting. I think that is actually one of the terms, purposes of the Springwood Avenue redevelopment zone, correct?
Right. I mean, I want to make sure that this is a community interactive project in the sense that the idea is that the community receives it, and it's actually, I mean, where I was at other places, it basically, the people who were frequenting it were people from the community, people who walked to the Clay Art Center, people who took their bike to the Clay Art Center, who were really interested locally. So it's nice to have people who can have access to, without going long distances, yes.
And towards that end, do you expect to be most of the people who come here?
So I think, again, we're looking for tenants as far as artists. I hope they're people with some sense of talent and experience in play so they can bring that to the center. And then I think, again, there can be special classes we would like to do for the community, different levels of interest, whether it's, like I said, my dream is that the schools, Asbury Park schools, could pick several students who have an aptitude or interest in art that don't really have an option of other exposure to art, and maybe that they could, we could develop some kind of a community class that either the tenants or the teachers could expose them to clay or give them a chance to express themselves through art in that way.
That's great. Now, in terms of operational details, just in terms of deliveries, what type of deliveries will your facility need?
So, I mean, usually they're just through FedEx or through UPS. So it'd be like maybe 25 small boxes of clay per month would be pretty much, and then a glaze.
And do you expect it to be one time per month, the deliveries roughly?
Usually one time per month, yeah. And then there would be glazes that may be coming intermittently in paper bags and so forth in that sense.
And would everything be stored inside?
Everything would be stored inside.
No outside storage?
No.
What about trash? What trash do you expect to generate from this use?
Very minimal. I mean, most of the trash would be basically from the cardboard boxes that the items come in. Most of the clay will be repurposed and reused, and usually, ugly pots and things that are not beautiful. Most of the other centers I worked, they sold them. They sold them at a discount rate. One man's trash is another man's treasure, and so very often people will buy them for whatever, for a flower pot or whatever. So a lot of the pottery can actually be sold at a discount or can be recycled.
And if you get approval and you get operating, what type of noise is your use going to generate? If people are walking down the street, are they going to hear the pottery wheels? Are they going to hear the kiln?
It's a very quiet art form. Yeah, it's not besides the spinning of the wheels, which is something you would not hear from one room to the other.
Okay. Madam Chair, I have no further questions at this point. Direct questions for the witness, unless you or the board members do.
Anybody? There's an Asian tradition where broken pottery is then put back together with like a gilded glue. What's that called?
I don't know Asian pottery that well, but
okay.
Sorry.
It's a way to reuse.
No, I know there was an article in the New York Times recently about I can't remember who the guy was talking about. It was one of the editorials was talking about the beauty, and I remember it's a rare art form, but I'm not familiar with it. But I did read the article.
You say that clay is reused, so that's not finished pieces that are broken. That is the scraps or the waste around.
Right. So when you make a pot, is that for me or? Huh? Oh, he's giving me the kintsugi is the name of the.
Thank you.
I'm probably not even pronouncing it correct. So there will be, during the making of the clay, there will be kind of slip or scraps that will be removed, and that usually is put into a bucket. Then you remove the water, and then you allow that to dehydrate, and then rework the clay so that you can then reuse it again. Then there will be the clay that's after it's been fired, that's hard, and that, like I said, you can either repurpose it if it's something that's not broken and maybe sell it, and if not, it can be recycled.
And all of the artists will be able to display and sell out of this gallery.
That's the idea, yeah. So and you probably have like where I am now. Every so often they'll have like a student show. So like once per season, the students that are there, they'll choose their best things that they have that they're proud of, and they will put those things up for sale for a student sale. And then the regular resident artists that are upstairs or will have their wares, and then we'll probably have visiting artists or people from elsewhere in New Jersey. I think it should be primarily New Jersey based. It would be nice as far as the majority of the art that we have there, the clay, and those people could display or sell their art there as well. Again, it's a plan and development, so obviously I don't have all the specifics of who will be displaying per se.
And you said that you're not going to necessarily have a tenant resident on an annual basis,
Right.
but would be shorter term.
For the studio rentals or for the
No,
live
no, no,
workspace?
I'm talking about the residential, the studio rentals, you know, that's different, but
Right,
for the residential
Well,
dwelling unit.
I mean, in my idea of what this is, the idea is if you have a long-term rental for what this is supposed to be, it becomes uninteresting to me because then you have just one person there all the time, and that doesn't bring anything new or interesting to the center. So it's not really meant to be a long-term residential unit. It's meant to be for people who are visiting specifically for a purpose of either teaching, or if they're going to be doing art for that particular. It's a art workspace. It's not really a residential. They're not going to come with anything but than a suitcase, no furniture. They come, work, and then leave.
Was that explained to Michelle Alonso in the planning office
Yeah.
prior to this coming to the planning board?
Yeah.
Because what you're telling us, what I'm hearing is that this really isn't a residence. It's something different.
Right.
A residence is permitted. Something
Right.
different may not be permitted.
Right.
And
So,
that
I mean,
has
I'll
implications
conform to
and that
whatever
has
has
implications to jurisdiction, whether it's
Right,
here or
right.
not. So
Understood.
I'm just trying to get the answers out here so that we understand.
Right. So, I'm like I said, I don't know what the rules specifically would be. If the parameters are that in order for it to be a residential unit, then maybe it will have to be a year if that's the limit of what's considered residential.
Because it may be considered a hotel, or
It's
it
not
may
a
be
hotel.
considered a short-term rental.
Right. Well,
Want to make sure that
that's not the purpose.
That's
But
not your
I will
intention.
do whatever it takes to conform to that idea of what the city wants to define as being a residence. But the idea is to bring, interesting, vibrant, artistic people to the city.
Understood.
Yeah.
And a place for the artist to live.
To live and work. It's not a place for them to just live.
This is a little different model than
Right,
you say.
but it was set up. That's what we called a live workspace or art space when we promoted it initially. Is because it's not for just a person to come live, but it has to be for an artist. There's a specific kind of person that will fill that niche. We want somebody who's going to bring something. It's a clay art center. It's not a residential building in that sense, but it can be a residence for somebody while they're there doing work.
What I meant to say is
Yeah.
that a typical live-work unit has a storefront that's for that entity, not necessarily a studio, and then they have their workspace and then they live upstairs. That's a traditional live-work unit.
Right.
This is a little different.
Right.
So we just want to nail down this residential piece.
Right. I mean, I guess the idea is that if you're an artist and you're doing your work, that's why people would rent the individual studios, is they want their own defined space, that people are not moving in and out of shelves in clay work. I mean, you're moving things in and out of shelves, and if you have something that you've been working very hard on, you're a well-known artist, I don't think you want other people reaching, so they'll have that space adjacent to where they live to be able to create that art. So I think that's a reasonable kind of permutation of the same thing.
All right, how do we make a determination if this is, like, what the parameters have to be in order for this board to be able to?
I assume that it's here because Michelle already made a determination.
Right.
Will the artists be paying for the space, or will they be staying in that space gratis because they're working there?
Again, that would depend on the agreement. Like in some cases, if they may be paying and then they may get a reduced rate because they're doing something for the community. So if I can work out a deal where they're here and they're going to teach a class or teach classes to the community, then that may be, but otherwise they would be paying a fee.
Was there any, now looking at this, I'm just a little, I just need a little clarity there that I see that when you're facing Springwood, what will the people as they're walking by will see the gallery?
Correct.
Right? They'll see the gallery.
Right.
What will they see as they turn the corner?
As they
turn the corner to the side of the building, because it looks like there are windows there. Will anyone see anything there where they can see activity, where they can see?
As they go down the drive,
Yes.
the driveway on the left-hand side, there's another entryway there. It kind of makes a little U
Right.
shape. And there will be windows there, and you can actually see clay and people working and
Okay.
inside. at that.
Okay, but just because I'm looking at A1,
Right.
that I see that there are windows there, it's unclear to me as to how big those windows are and and there's like a room that says pottery. So we can go through that too.
Sure.
I'm interested in to see like how are we bringing the public in, increase the vibrancy of that area to just understand what are they seeing and how big the windows are so they can truly see in, because it looks like the art studios are really upstairs as opposed to downstairs where people can see what's going on.
Well, no, the whole second half of the building is all wheels and.
Oh, that's pottery. That's
all
where you
pottery.
noted pottery.
Right, and then you have to also remember that, in this particular, you have to have a lot of shelving because everything's drying, and so if you're all windows, you can't have any shelving. So it's a balance between those two entities.
Okay, so when we do get to that, I'm very interested to see how large those windows are.
Sure.
And, I get that you need a lot of space,
Right.
but go ahead. Keep going.
Okay.
If we're done.
Any other questions for Doctor?
Any other questions from the planning board? Any questions from go for it.
Refuse. You mentioned that all refuse will be kept in the garage, is that correct?
That's correct.
Even for the live work unit as well?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Do you anticipate public pickup or?
Well, I was anticipating, because that was kind of explained to me when I talked to Michelle, that was the situation, but I don't know if it's something different. That's how that block basically works. Everybody on that block has public pickup, so.
Okay, so it'll probably be kept in cans in the garage and rolled out?
Correct.
Okay.
In terms of the garage, I noticed there's electric and water going out there. Is there gonna be like, I guess lighting obviously inside the garage? Any pottery going on in the garage as well, or just?
No pottery, probably a hose bib or something, water access to the garage.
All right, open up to the public. Any questions from the public? If not, then let's move on to your next witness.
Okay, Anthony Arcolino, architect.
How are you, Anthony?
Good.
Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear that the testimony about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Thank you. Please spell your name for me.
It's Anthony Ercolino, Ercolino, Passman Ercolino Architects.
All right, good evening, Anthony. You're testifying tonight in your capacity as a licensed architect, correct?
Yes.
And are your licenses and certifications current and up to date?
Yes.
And Madam Chair, would you like to hear any of his further credentials?
No, we're okay. If everything is current.
Thanks. So, Anthony, you're familiar with this project, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I know, why don't you sort of explain how the design of the building came out, and then why don't you go through and give us a description of the materials and size, and I know the chair had some questions about the sizes of the windows and what and how those windows are going to promote street engagement.
Okay, I guess initially David came to me with a building that had been designed by a different architect who was not licensed in New Jersey, did the design of it. So then he needed somebody who's licensed in New Jersey to be able to follow the project through. So that's how I got involved in it. The designer is still involved, but now I'm going to be the architect of record.
Okay. And why don't you describe the building? Just do a general in terms of height and size and.
Well, it's a two-story building. There is a parapet wall up at the top above the roof line. The stucco around the base level, the first floor, and then we have wood product around the perimeter of the second floor of the building.
And in terms of, why don't you just go right into windows?
Okay, we have a series of punched windows, operable and fixed. The first floor also has operable and fixed windows. The operable windows are kept high for ventilation purposes, but the rest of the windows the lower windows are fixed.
And what about in terms of the size and nature and location of the windows? Can you sort of explain or address the chair's question about how this is going to engage the public and engage the streetscape?
Well, yeah, the windows across the front of the studio, the ones that you see here on the left side of the doors, are full height windows. Let's see if I have some dimensions up here.
And while you're doing that, let's mark the architectural plans as Exhibit A1.
Yeah, those windows are 6 feet tall. So they don't look like it there, but they're 6 feet tall, and it's about a little over 10 feet wide for that array of windows in the front of the building. And then as you turn the corner, you can see that there's full height glass next to where the doors are that are also facing Springwood Avenue. As you then go down the side, the windows are high along the driveway and also around into the alcove portion. And then there's a doorway going into the space.
And just, I know the doctor gave his opinion, and why don't you just answer the question, when people walk by these windows, when they look in, what are they gonna be seeing?
Well, the front windows are going to see the wares of whatever the pottery on the shelves, whatever's for sale, and whatever's going on in that space.
And why don't you talk a little bit about the air conditioning?
The air conditioning unit's going to be up on the roof. We haven't had a mechanical engineer involved yet, but we're proposing to keep it up towards the rear portion of the building. Up on the roof here, we may have 1 unit or 2. They are far enough in where nobody's going to ever see them between the height of the parapet and distance back off the edge. They will not be able to see them. The height of the parapet. I have 2'7" minimum for the height of the parapet, so 31 inches minimum at the edge, and then the HVAC unit will be set inbound, a minimum of 10 feet from the edge.
And so I know there was a concern about whether the air conditioner or air conditioners on the rooftop needed to be screened. So your initial response is that?
My initial response is no, I don't think they'll have to be screened unless the mechanical engineer comes up with something ridiculously tall, in which case we could put a barrier around it so that it's not seen.
And just while we're talking about height, what is the height of the building?
27 feet.
And that complies with the Springwood Avenue redevelopment requirements, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And anything else in terms of architectural details that you want to explain to the board?
Well, a comment came back about the cornice at the top of the building, and we created a cornice up there, or a cap for the top of the building. So it has a sort of a base and then a middle of a cap.
Okay. Madam Chair, I have no further direct questions for this witness at this time.
Okay. I'm a little confused when you're looking at that south elevation and it says hard stucco up on the top of the building. Is that where the HVAC is?
No, the HVAC.
So what is that? What is that?
Oh, this is the stair tower. Sorry about that.
The
That's
stair
the stair
tower.
So that you can access the roof. There's a stair. Here's where the stair is in the building. Going from the first floor to the second floor, and then to access the roof.
And how far away is that from the front of the building? I mean, is that visible from my concern is the visibility from the street. Because according to this picture, or depiction, it looks like it's right at the edge. How far is it set back? Meaning that, is it visible from the street?
I don't know that it's going to be, it's probably 24 feet back.
So it's roughly 24 feet?
Yeah.
Are there any requirements, Michael, about that in this area? Is that within?
I can't read the height. What's the height above the roof of the tower?
It looks like 6.6.
6.5 feet, 6 inches.
Right, so it's just tall enough to get the stair out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again,
It's
and
no
that's
problem.
24 feet back from the
There's no
front
height
edge
issue.
of this parapet is, so I don't know.
Okay, so it's 24 feet back, and the HVAC is even further than that.
Yeah, the
So
HVAC
that,
is behind that
okay,
and to the side.
all right, I understand.
It would be more visible from the
Side.
the side view, which we don't see. And it's not modeled on the perspective. It's correct. Can I just ask, you haven't modeled that in the perspective rendering?
No,
So,
actually, I don't know if Hillary did that. She, the designer, created these. And I'm not sure whether or not she had it in there and you just don't see it in this view. You did any of the other one? No, I don't see it in any of the other.
All right, so just to clarify as to what is visible on the eastern side, you're able to see inside the gallery as you're turning the corner, right? And then there's a window that you really can't see into, which is fair, and then there's a door, which you really can't see into.
Well, the door is in the alcove.
Right, it's in the alcove. And is there anything that shows me all right, so in the alcoves, also, the windows are high.
Correct.
So essentially, the only place that anyone will be able to see what's going on inside is at the gallery level.
Front of the building.
Nobody will be able to see what's going on, except the gallery.
You'll see it from the steps. Those,
Of-
if you go, as you're going up the steps, going into the, I do have,
Oh, what steps? I don't see any steps.
As you're going into that, the center portion of the building,
There's no steps there.
well, you should be able to see inside, those windows should be at the level. that
We
you're-
can put taller windows in there if you like.
Right.
They're not there now.
I'm just trying to understand what is there, because it doesn't look as though there's any visibility outside of the front.
Correct.
Okay.
And
Okay.
those windows are clear.
Yes.
Does anybody else from the board have any questions about?
Just one question, just to stick with the windows. Is there an opportunity to increase the window size on the Springwood Avenue facade? Or is it,
So I think, I mean, on the inside would be good. I think the problem again is there's some limited, wall space for displaying the artwork and putting shelves for, I mean, the problem is gonna be shelving for every place I've ever done pottery, the problem is storage. And so if we lose a lot of space for windows where people can put the shelving and where the wheels and so forth, so it's gonna be a problem of how you can utilize the space for what it's supposed to be. That's the problem.
not to play designer here, but are windows and shelving mutually exclusive? I mean, it would seem to me that if you're displaying shelves inside of the window somehow, and they were spanning the glass, that's part of the.
People moving things in and out from these shelves, like wood planks against that, would be right against the glass, so it would be kind of, I don't think intuitive to put glass next to where you would be moving large things in and out.
well, and also, I mean, I could understand it. I could understand the window selection for maybe the pottery area, but I think of the most important faces of this building is going to be the ground floor facing Springwood. You really want the community and the public and everyone to see what's going on there. You want it to be interactive. I think it would be well served to add another bank of windows or heighten the windows that are on that ground floor. That's just my opinion.
The mission.
We can make the window wider, I mean, I don't have a problem with that, I mean, like I said, it's just,
Yeah.
it limits the use of space.
Sure.
Right, the overall goal this area is to have a storefront.
Right.
And storefront traditionally had, you know, recesses and large glass areas. You know, there were 75% glass, let's say. This has the doors and it's on both angles, so you're getting that from the side. But that window bank in the front should really be stretched. And if you're going to do that, one of the comments in our report was try to rationalize the upper windows with the lower windows. So that should be a guide to where that should finish.
Yeah, what I can do is I can make that happen with that elevation, widen the windows and get them to have some parity with the.
Yeah,
windows
yeah.
above.
Right.
It may extend this little cornice a little bit. With
The canopy?
But, so we want that.
Right, and you know exactly where we're getting at. We want that, because this is really essentially a retail space. You know, it's gallery retail, and we want
With
it
no
as
objection
vibrant
to
as possible.
Excellent idea.
I should really engage the public, make them
Want to come in,
find
right.
out what's going on here, what's exciting and interesting in here. And
Yep.
it looks like it's a lot of blank wall that creates a barrier more than an engagement.
So, Councilwoman, we can engage it more, because more people in is better for us and better for all of us, absolutely.
Yeah, and to the blank wall comment, I think, you know, I don't think it should at all be a condition of this approval for this project, should it receive one, but I think it would be well served at some point in the future to have some kind of mural or, you know, some other way to activate the space. And again, I don't think it should be a condition of approval, but it just seems like it would fit both the use of the building and improve the ground floor aesthetic. It's just a comment.
Do you mean something like on the east side?
Yeah, on the
Like
east
on
side.
that, on those east side walls?
Yeah, yeah.
There's something that should
inviting and
engage.
engaging, you know, to bring people down that drive. I think that'd be. Okay, cool, awesome. Yep.
Or even over time, you could take the broken pottery pieces.
Sure.
And you can festoon the side of the building.
Sure.
Anyone have any other questions before we get to public question? We're okay? Okay. And who's going to be replying to the planner's report?
Mostly our engineer, and
Okay.
then we reserve a right to have a group approach.
Okay. All right, so at this point, anybody else have any questions of the architect? Just you're up in a second. All right, so nobody? All right, open up to the public for questions of the architect. Yeah, please. And if you could just keep the question, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions about as we proceed. So these questions would be exactly about what we just talked about. Okay? Yes,
name
please.
and address, please.
My name is Valley Watson. I actually own the property adjacent to this on the left-hand side.
Okay.
So everyone was talking about the driveway. I just wanted to know, is there a picture of that? The whole property, so I can see where the driveway's sitting?
Oh, are you on 1315 or on 1321?
1321.
1321. Okay.
Show
All right.
that-
We
show that
haven't.
picture behind, okay, there it is.
There it is. And we'll be going over, I'm assuming, much more of this
Yes.
as we proceed, but that is the picture of the driveway for now. Anything else? All right, your next witness.
Okay, Renato, come on up.
Sir, please raise your right hand. The swear testimony about to give in this matter be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please state your name for the record and spell it.
Renato Bernardes, that's R-E-N-A-T-O. Last name is Bernardes, B-E-R-N-A-R-D-E-S.
Put your hand down. Thank
All
you.
right, good evening, and just for the record, you're testifying tonight in your capacity as a licensed engineer,
Correct.
and all your licenses and certifications current and up to date?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Madam Chair, would you like any further
And I would assume that's here in New Jersey.
Correct.
So with that, we'll accept. So Mr. Bernardes, why don't you, let's just, since we have that exhibit up about the site plan, why don't you give an overview of the current site?
And why don't we mark this into exhibit as exhibit A3, I'm sorry, A2.
A2.
And this is the,
How would you describe it, Mr. Bernard?
This would be a site plan?
This is a site plan. It's 2 lots, 3,000.
You know, let me just, for the record, it's site plan prepared by your office?
A site plan prepared by Bernard's Engineering Design Consultants.
And is there a date on that?
There is. It is.
It's today. Oh, on that one.
oh, okay, so we're marking the site plan as exhibit A2,
Yes.
not the rendering.
November 2nd, 2020.
Thank you.
Okay, so why don't you go through and walk us through the site?
It is 2 small lots. One is 3,750 square feet. It's lot of 41. And there's also the second lot is lot 42 at 3,125 square feet. It's located within a neighborhood commercial zone, or also the Springwood Avenue redevelopment area. It is on the corner of DeWitt Avenue. We are proposing a small driveway to access the site at 12 feet wide, and we have 5 parking spaces, and we also have a proposed garage that will also add another parking space. We have landscaping along the easterly side of the property, and we also have a handicap parking space available with an ADA ramp access to the building. We also have 2 bicycle racks that we'll be adding, one in the back by the rear entrance and one on the side entrance. Is there something else you want me to say? It's also project defeats, it's a minor development as it relates to stormwater management.
Okay, and why don't you just, in terms of, in any particular order, parking, I know you said 6 parking spaces, just for the record, can you tell the board how many spaces are required?
For required is 1 space per 500 square foot of gross floor area. So we arrived at 2,472 square feet divided by 500 square feet for 5 spaces, and also 1 space per 1 bedroom unit. So we had 1 housing unit for a total of 6 spaces.
So 6 spaces are required and 6 spaces are proposed?
Correct.
Okay, and what about the ADA parking space? Is there an ADA space?
There is an ADA space proposed on the
And
project.
that will be striped and signed?
That will be striped and signed.
And
signage is located on the detail sheet, and we show striping as well.
And what about utilities?
Utilities, well, we will be proposing sewer, water, and gas. Utilities connecting into the existing lines on Springwood Avenue.
And I know that there were some engineering comments about grading and drainage and those types of things. Can you address that?
Those are comments that we can comply with through small revisions, and we don't see them as a major obstacle for this.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Let's mark the inside report as B1. And I assume you're referring to compliance with their letter of September 30th, the report of 21?
Correct.
Okay, do we need to go, Doug or Mr. Bernardes, do we need to go through the report? Or you're just indicating that you're going to comply with the recommendation?
I have spoken with Douglas earlier in the afternoon, and we did go through some possible solutions. For the most part, we are complying with most of his requests.
Doug, how does that sort with you?
I think it would be helpful if we could go, I mean, you could certainly breeze through the numbers, but just to be clear on everything.
Sure.
Might be helpful.
Okay, for comments 1, 2, 3, we will comply in adding those items. For comment number 4, it is a vacant lot, so there's nothing to demolish there.
Okay.
There are no existing or proposed easements at this time. There are no freestanding signs proposed at this time for number 6.
And actually, just for the record, we are going to propose a sign. I don't think we have the exact details, but would the sign we comply, with the sign we propose comply with the redevelopment zone requirements?
Yes, it would.
All right, and Madam Chair, the architect, I forgot, can testify momentarily about some of the sign details that we're proposing.
Just to be clear, there's signs shown on the building, facade signs, building on signs.
Correct.
There's no freestanding sign?
There's no freestanding sign. There's only going to be the signs on the building.
Okay.
There is no loading area indicated on the plans. We're not expecting major deliveries here. It's not nothing like a grocery store or a retail store where they have a lot of drop-offs. So we're expecting normal deliveries through like USPS or FedEx or UPS. Number 8, we will comply, and we'll add the colors, and we'll add more details to the notes. Number 9, the refuse area. Like we said, mentioned earlier, we'll be storing the trash cans. There will be 4 trash cans, about 50-gallon containers each, that we'll be storing inside the garage. Number 10, it speaks to architectural plans. Number 11, color.
I assume, if I may interrupt, excuse me, I assume, Mr. Kennedy, that these details will be forthcoming from the architect in number 10?
Yes.
The downspouts are actually shown on the garage. They're not called out, but they are shown on the garage. The mechanical equipment is shown on the plans up on the roof. As far as we know, that's where it's going to be located. Again, I don't know how many or what the MEP guy is going to need. The sign detail, I'll supply you with the dimensions for the signs, but we fall within the 24 square feet.
Okay, great, thanks.
Keep going. Okay, number 11, detailed description of the proposed operations in sufficient detail.
The applicant has already testified.
Okay. Number 12, we know an existing shade tree. We can comply with the board planners on replacement trees as far as landscaping, and we can switch out in and out the things that were recommended.
So that's a yes.
Yes. The buffer strip, it's a very small site, so we're very limited on what we can do with the site, and as well as providing the required parking.
You're requesting a waiver?
We're requesting a yes relief.
Exception.
Number 14, I think we went over the parking spaces already, as well as the garages.
You can add those up to the plan, the calculation?
Yes,
Yes.
We can add that to the cover sheet. Number 15, we're also seeking relief for the, we are very limited on placement of the garage, while still allowing proper circulation. And we also we're also limited to we can only size a 12-foot driveway instead of a 24-foot driveway, so we really need the circulation in the parking area. Uh, 17, temporary testimony shall be provided exterior buffering. It's basically the same area where it's due to lack of space and the sizing a lot, as well as still trying to maintain compliance with other parts of the requirements.
So that's an exception. That's what you're requesting, an exception for?
Yes.
For which one?
17.
17?
Number 18 speaks to architectural review. That's architectural elements. Number 19, lighting plan shall be revised. We can comply with all of 19. We can we can adjust the lighting locations and make sure that we're not shining light onto adjoining properties, as well as lighting the areas that were not lit, and as well as providing candles for the existing lighting on Springwood Avenue onto the lighting plan. Number 20, 21, 22, and 23, we will comply. Number 24, we anticipate low volume of waste. We're providing 4 trash receptacles, each capable of 50 gallons of storage. We believe that will be adequate for the trash and recycle requirements for the site. Yeah, and 24 speaks to the same. We anticipate low volume of waste. Yeah. 25, This is onto a stormwater control. We had issues here as far as the seasonal high water table. It's quite high on the site. According to our boring, we only have about 3 feet of separation between the existing grade and seasonal high water table. And according to DEP, NJDEP requirements, we need at least 2 feet above seasonal high water table. So we're very, very limited on the space that we could use for storage. I have not at this time run the water quality storm, but we're looking to run that storm and comply and show those numbers.
So just to elaborate on that one a little bit, the application is considered a minor development in terms of Asbury Park's stormwater control ordinance. I think it's, in terms of the seasonal high water table, there are potentially some other possibilities, in regards to green infrastructure, that don't require going underground, that could potentially be incorporated here. So just throwing that out there.
And we are willing to go over some possible solutions, but at this time, I would still need more information to be able to comment on whether those we'd be able to work those solutions into the property. But like I said, as it is right now, we were very severely hampered by the size of the lot, and also it's a very small storm to begin with. Per our stormwater report, the volume of the water quality is already low. The 2-year storm is 137 cubic feet of water produced, and the water quality storm would be even lower than that. There are possible solutions that, like I said, we could possibly investigate, but at this time, I don't have any more information than that.
So yeah, Doug, does it currently meet the city's storm? It doesn't.
No. So the ordinance is pretty clear in regards to what volume of water must be retained on site.
Right.
Currently, there is no detention proposed. I've spoken to the applicant's engineer. He has some ideas in terms of how to incorporate some detention. It's just a matter of finding out exactly how much, which seems to be kind of unknown at the moment.
Permeable pavers, would that be enough?
You need to know that.
Yeah, that would be something that'll have to come back.
Yeah,
Because we cannot.
We don't waive any of that.
That
Right,
cannot be
right.
waived at this time.
Right.
So
Okay.
we'll have to work out some sort of a solution, and then when you guys come back, then we can walk through that.
Also, if I may, under the stormwater regulations management, section 5E says variances from strict compliance with the requirements of the section may be granted by the reviewing board for those projects where an applicant has demonstrated the inability or impracticability of strict compliance with stormwater management requirements in this section.
So we would need to understand how much is
There's got to be a demonstration.
right needs to be taken care of, and then whether there's something on site that could do it. Because the first thought that jumped in my head is maybe the porous asphalt could, but if it's a high groundwater table, maybe it doesn't work.
Yeah, that's the issue. The high water table has caused a lot of issues with those kind of systems. Where basically you're not really storing much of anything, and it's just going to run off anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, just to throw it out there, typical, for example, if pervious pavers were used, an estimated thickness might be, as long as they were less than a foot thick, the seasonal high groundwater is 3 feet down, so you would still have the 2 foot separation.
Right. Okay.
Well, but that's still something that you guys have to work that out when you're coming
remember,
back.
this is a very serious.
Oh, it's very serious.
The drainage situation with all the new ordinances and what we went through in reviewing them and creating them here in the city, they're extremely important.
I'm willing to work with the city engineer on finding a solution and proposing something that will be adequate, approved by everybody.
You got 26?
26. A minimum of 24 foot width is required for two-way operation driveways serving commercial. 12 foot is required, and a relief is required. So, like I said, we're limited on the size of the lot. We only have a 50-foot frontage as it is. A 24 foot width driveway is not feasible.
And what about the activity of the intensity of the driveway? Is it?
Well, as far as traffic flow, we're not anticipating a huge intensity or need for two-way traffic. We also have provided enough circulation in the back area where cars will be able to turn around.
So could you just briefly, or maybe someone could briefly describe what happens with the gate operation? Because I see that there's a driveway gate. Is that right?
Sure. Do you want that, or you want?
Hold on. If we start, then I've got to subject him to.
Oh, okay. Well, let's finish. Let's finish. Yeah.
Let's finish with the engineer.
Yep.
Okay, I have an answer from before. It's like gate will remain unlocked during open business hours and closed and locked at night. Parking spaces primarily reserved for studio center to have access to their spaces. Studio renters will be able to unlock and open and close as per place under rules at the discretion. And property owner and his designees will have the ability to operate the gate.
Okay. And so the gate is located approximately, it looks like, I saw it.
It's approximately on the line where the cutout happens in the building for that side entrance. The gate is approximately there.
It's long enough to get a car.
At least one car. Okay.
It's at least one car.
Great.
And we're not, I'm sorry. Just going back to point 26 with the two-way operation driveway. I mean, given the nature and extent of activity that we're expecting, any problems from a functional standpoint or a safety standpoint?
I do not see any safety or functionality issues with this, especially with the limited amount of parking that we're proposing.
Yep.
Skip a number. That's 26, 27. There more grading, more spot grading was requested. It will comply. And 28 will coordinate with the architect prior to grading to make sure that we're providing the correct amount of steps entrances according to grading. 29. Will comply. 30 is the gate. We just answered that question. 31 will comply. 32 will comply. 33. We already answered that question with the electricity and the water with David Duncan earlier. 34. No mechanical equipment is proposed around the outside of the site. We have the air conditioning unit that is proposed on the roof. 35. We have the access to the emergency vehicle access. We'll have the use of the driveway as well as the circulation area, and access keys can be provided through emergency services. 36, 37, 38, 39, 40 are all will complies. As far as other approvals, we can make applications to the Freehold Soil Conservation District as well as the Monmouth County Planning Board. We are not in a CAFR zone or a flood hazard zone.
And all those outside approvals, you would make approval or application for in the event that this board saw fit to approve the application?
Correct.
And Madam Chair, did you want him to go through Mr. Sullivan's memo?
If the engineer is the appropriate person to answer it.
I think some of that should be architects.
All right.
I can switch off with him now.
Okay.
What I could do is I could quickly go through those that were dovetailing with Doug's, just while he's here, just to make sure that we get the answers correct.
Okay.
That helps, and then we can go.
That'd be great.
Okay. We talked about the off-street parking, the bicycle parking. We asked for a revised detail of the bicycle rack.
Is there, okay, we have not seen the city standard stable
It's
bicycle rack?
it's an inverted U.
Yeah.
So instead of having the loop,
Okay.
which does in effect, so you'd have three. I think three of those would be.
Yeah. So
equivalent.
I was actually going to make a comment. I guess if you're the appropriate person, I think the better location for the bike rack that is in that alcove might be on Springwood Avenue. Because I think as a cyclist who's looking to visit the site, you probably wouldn't know that there's a bike rack in the driveway behind the gate.
It as long as the orientation doesn't block the sidewalk.
Right, yeah, it would be.
The sidewalk is, what, 11 feet there? Is it 11? But Can you tell us what the,
What the, with the sidewalk is? Or?
yeah, there's also a shade tree there. So if you did it, you'd have to align it to the.
Yeah, it would have to be parallel with Springwood
Parallel.
Avenue, yeah. We have other bike racks along Springwood Avenue, so I think. Yeah, so there should be room, no?
It's if they're perpendicular to the building, but if they're parallel.
It would be parallel to the building,
If
yeah.
they're parallel, they'd be fine.
Yeah,
They're gonna have
just
to be
one.
right up against the building. You just want one loop?
Oh, just one loop, in the street furniture zone, basically.
Like in line with the tree?
In line with the tree, yeah.
We can comply with that.
Okay.
Good. Site lighting, so we talked about additional lighting needed and
Yes.
the color temperature.
We can comply with that and
And,
provide that information.
Provide full composite lighting. We've talked about refuse and recycling. Fences, recommended that the eastern chain link fence along the eastern property line be replaced with a solid wood fencing.
Okay, we will comply.
Okay. Signs, I guess we're gonna get testimony on the size of the signs from the architect. Mechanical equipment, we talked about that. We need to see all the locations of mechanicals. You said you provide the 2 street trees along Springwood?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We've talked about the building design. You've talked about the kiln, not it?
Briefly on the street trees, would they be both in front of this property?
Yes.
Is there enough spacing? Okay.
Yeah, it's 50 feet, so the 30-foot
Typically
spacing,
30-foot
so you
spacing.
shift them. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
All right, there should be. Yes, yeah, we talked about that, yes. Architecture. The plant materials, you said you'd comply with our recommendation
Yes.
regarding all the plant materials?
Correct.
That's
We will comply with the
change of
with the-
species of the trees and some of the shrubs. And then we note for the record the non-residential affordable housing impact.
What about, did we go through F on page 6 of 10? Primary windows, upper story windows?
Yes, we talked about that when we talked about the discussion about
Right.
lengthening.
So
the
that
window on the
will- that
bottom,
will
we would
take
address
care of
those
that.
as well, correct?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know that they'll meet, they still may not comply, though.
What's that?
I don't know that they'll get another 70 square feet. They may increase the size, but I don't think it's gonna meet meet the requirement of the.
How do you calculate your requirement? Is it from the floor to the ceiling, or is it floor to floor?
It's based on the exterior elevation, so from the floor, we look for that.
The first floor.
First floor, it's the ground.
So is it from the floor to the ceiling, or from the floor to the floor above?
To the floor above, because that's what you see from the outside.
Yeah, Michael, they may come back with a design that's short.
It may be short, but they're still going to address.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That's what I'm
I
saying,
think, yeah, we're on the
Michael,
same
and
page.
then you'll look at it and you'll
Right.
say yea or nay.
That's
Yep,
right.
yep.
That's right. It was addressed that they were going to address it. We still don't know if relief will be required.
Yeah, yeah.
In all likelihood.
They probably won't.
Still may need
Yeah.
relief.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's it. I would suggest that if the board is not, I think that the renderings need to be revised, not just the elevations with the new windows, so that the board can see those in proportion and in perspective. And I would submit that you might want to see a perspective from the side where the stair tower comes up, from that angle. If that helps you, if you can visualize it now and you don't need that, then that's fine, but I would suggest that that would be a good view to have.
Right.
Because we're getting the sexy view. Right now, we're getting.
We
all
need
this.
the other views.
Right.
Before we move on, can we mark the planner's report as exhibit B2?
Perfect. Thank you.
Renato, do you have anything else to add at this point?
I do not.
Madam Chair, I have no further direct line of questioning for the witness at this time.
Okay, then we're gonna have the architect come back as soon as we're finished with
Sure.
that. Okay. Anybody, any other questions for our engineer? Nothing? Public, any questions for the engineer? About what was discussed? Okay. Your next witness.
Okay, Anthony, we call you back. Anthony Ercolino, you're were previously sworn and you recognize you're still under oath, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I know there was some questions and testimony regarding signage, so why don't you tell us a little bit about the signage?
The signage is they're going to be resin signs. They're approximately 20 to 22 inches tall. And I think the whole AP clay that you see on the outer facade is about 12 square feet. I'll do a full calculation for you, but it's not close to the allowable.
All right, so it's within the allowable limits?
Correct.
Okay, and you're gonna stay within the allowable limits?
And you'll give us the calculations.
I will.
next.
I think that's it.
Madam Chair, were there any?
I had a question. The canopy appears that it might be encroaching on the front setback or the right of way. It looks very close to us, so we said it complies, but we're not sure.
Yeah, it projects out, I think it's about 12 inches or so.
Into the right of way.
12 to 14 inches into the right of way, much like an awning.
But it's not an awning.
But, no, it's not an awning.
No, it's not.
It's not canvas.
You need to tell us that, with specificity, you take a look at it, and if so,
Okay.
A technical submission is required for encroachment. We always give conditional approval, but it's subject to mayor and council.
All right, I'll put some dimensions on
Yeah,
it for the next
just
time.
give us some numbers.
I thought that they did.
Look at it.
Is it in there?
Yeah, I thought they did.
Okay.
Madam Chair, were there any other questions for the
Um,
architect?
Yes, I thought that we were going to discuss in the insight report, number 10, on page 3 of 8, where it says the architectural plan must be updated to clarify. I know we
Okay.
just spoke about signs. You're going to update the mechanical?
Eventually, again,
Well,
typically.
it eventually
we don't
would
get a
have to
mechan-
be before it gets approved,
Okay. well,
right?
Then we need to hire a mechanical engineer to
Yeah,
engineer the.
just where you think it's going to be and how you're going to shield it.
If you're gonna shoot.
If you're gonna shield it. Because we're gonna ask you to shield it.
The board needs to see a pictorial so they can say, okay, we like that location, you do not need shield.
Okay, so.
Understood.
Okay.
Okay. From what height do you want it shielded from?
Sorry?
From what height do you want it shielded from? So if I'm standing in the street, do you want to not
Right.
be able to see it? Or if I'm standing on the second floor of the neighboring building, do you not want to see it?
Oh, no, I don't think it has to go that far. I'll leave that to you.
I would suggest that the most sensitive view shed is from the public.
From the
street.
public, yeah.
Public street.
Yeah, and if it were located all on the back portion of the roof, I don't think it would need any shielding, right?
Right.
I mean,
Right, but I think that
Well-
this was the gas and electric, right?
No,
Oh, we're
this is
talking
the
about-
HVAC.
Oh,
on
the
roof.
HVAC, yeah,
on
it's
the
that
roof.
far out.
But then,
Talking about rooftop.
right, so
Yeah.
that's the first thing. And actually, even if you don't know where they're going to be, you should be showing.
Well, I know where
so-
they're going to be, and they are shown on the drawings.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
it's
so
here.
they're there.
It's shown, and they're at least 10 feet in from the perimeter. Like I said, the parapet wall is, call it 30 inches, it's actually a little taller, but 30 inches. And 10 feet back in perspective view from the bottom, looking up, it's, what do we say, 27 feet tall? If we're looking in perspective, unless that HVAC unit is 10 feet tall, you're not going to see it.
Right, that's what, we want to make sure that we're not seeing that.
We'll provide the details.
Okay. and
But,
the-
but the other one is the meters and the
Right.
things that are coming in that may be attached to the building, right?
Right.
So if they're going to be attached, ideally they are not on the front. They should not be on Springwood Avenue, and particularly with a narrow building like this,
Right.
all you've got is the building facade.
Yeah, I think
So-
we should put them back in the alcove.
Exactly.
yeah.
Right,
Exactly.
that would be great.
In Philadelphia, they still don't get this. You'll see these brand-new buildings and they have them plastered right on the front.
That's the utility company.
And the other one on number 10 was the downspouts, so you'll have that for the garage? They should be shown on the plan?
They are on the plan. They're not called out, but they are shown on the plan on the garage.
All right, Doug, if you're,
I can show it to you where it is if you need to see it. Yes, I will definitely add a label.
okay,
We'll call that out.
all right. I think that those were the only ones that we needed some more clarification on, outside of the solutions for the stormwater control. Okay, I don't know if anybody else has any other questions of the architect? Anyone? Any other questions from the professionals? Any questions from the public of the architect? No. Okay. Okay. So do we want to review what we need to come back with? If you don't mind? You could start, Jack, and I'll
Okay.
I'll see what else we got.
Okay, then I just have them in very general terms.
That's fine.
Widening of the window bank on Springwood.
Yep.
The lots are gonna merge.
Yes, that has to be, actually, that's something that wasn't really, don't we have to have a separate?
No.
Something
Well,
is
it's
just
in the
a.
conditions, it's by operation of law anyway.
Okay.
They're
So
gonna
it's
be
just a
merged.
condition.
There's gonna
Okay.
be a merger.
Okay.
Because you can't
Right.
distinguish these two lots once it's combined.
Okay.
I'd like to have Michael and Doug make their own comments versus whatever else they're waiting on.
Yep.
If you don't mind.
Oh, well, yeah, the sign, clearly, the bicycle parking, site lighting, needs to be detailed. Fence, solid fence, not chain link fence. Mechanical equipment, and not just the HVAC, but also the meters, the street trees. And then the modifications, and I think you may have said this already, the windows and the.
Yes, it's all right, reiterate.
And the other changes to the building elevation. And also, we talked about a perspective, adding that to the perspective, modifying the perspectives, and also getting a view from the east side so that you can see, because that stair tower is pushed up against that side, just so that folks understand what that looks like, and there's a building next to it that's lower.
Right, so we also need to.
From the west side.
So we need it from the west side and we need it from the back, from the north side. Because we don't see what the back of this building looks like.
From the west side.
Right, from the west side and from the
From the north?
north. Because
From
I don't know
the
what the back of it looks like.
The drawings have all the elevations are
I don't see the back. I mean, I don't see any renderings for
there.
those.
No, not the renderings, but we have the elevations are drawn.
I think the point is that in the perspectives, we're getting more what you're actually gonna see rather than the elevations. And there was a question about the stair tower, and we understand it's gonna be about 8 feet above the height of the roof and about 6 feet above the parapet wall. But that the building next to it is lower, so that may be worthwhile for the board to be able
Right,
to
to
see
see
that
what does that look
perspective
like, the west side of the building.
from the corner.
You want a perspective from all the way around.
From,
That would
the
be
best
helpful.
would be from that west corner.
Right.
Because we have that stairwell that's going up.
Okay.
And the other building is lower, so we'd like to see that. Is there anything else, Mike?
And then the plantings, the revisions to the plant material.
Yes. Revisions of that.
And then Doug,
All right, Doug?
drainage situation.
Yeah, the biggest is the stormwater management, provisions. There's also a few items related to grading and drainage that kind of go hand in hand with the stormwater management. And then, I mean, certainly anything else that can be done to clean up our letter would be appreciated, but, you know, we can always certainly work with, the applicant's engineer.
Right, we just want to make sure that when you come back, that you're coming back once.
Understood.
And you have everything that we've asked for. That's why we're only just trying to go through this.
Understood.
Okay, Doug?
Yep. Was the sign illuminated up on the side of the building?
No.
No?
The sign will not be illuminated because you're not looking
Not
to,
internally. Not internally.
Lights can go up on it.
will they be? We need to know that.
Discuss it and let us know.
Yeah, let us know.
Right.
With the signage, let us know.
Just discuss it, let us know.
Yeah.
If there's gonna, yeah, if there's gonna be indirect lighting or backlighting, let us know.
Right. Go ahead. Oh, okay, you have a question about, go for it.
Valley Watson again. So the left side of the building is just totally concrete, no windows, nothing on the left side?
That's why we're asking for the left side. Well, I'll leave it to the applicant to answer the question. There's nothing there? And we're asking for a rendering of that side, which is really the west side of the building, so we can see what it will look like.
Okay, that's what I thought you said.
Because the building
It's
on the
in
left is a little lower.
Okay, just to be really transparent, which I shared with Dr. Duncan, the reason that lot is empty is because there was a house to the left-hand side of that property that burned to the ground and took the next house with it. When that happened, it damaged my building. They had to basically get on the roof, melted all the windows out on the side. Now, when these two are abutted right up against each other, my mother, who has since passed, told me she was given an easement because of all the damage to the building, but it's nowhere in record to be found. Where is this kiln going to be in the building? Is it against the wall or is it to the left?
Where's the kiln in the building? Yeah.
I just didn't get a detailed map. I only got the little letter, so I don't.
Yeah, there's two kilns, and you can see it here. If you want to step up, you can also step up. If you want to see a little closer where the kilns are. They're the,
So they are right up against the building.
They're next to your house.
Well, yeah, but so left side. Your building is over. Okay.
all right, anything else? All right. All right, Irina, the next available.
Yep, let's just make this easy. Same date, November 15th.
Okay.
7 p.m. here.
Okay.
Mr. Kennedy, will you waive any time constraints?
I will, sir. And Madam Chair, may I ask, without the need for any further public notice?
That's correct. With no can I get a motion to move to carry this application to November 15th without further notice?
7 p.m.
At 7 p.m. here.
So moved. Second.
All right.
Thank you. I have a motion by
I think we should make it 6.
all in favor?
Aye.
We'll get these two.
If they come back to them, I think it should be
Application carries to November 15th without further
I don't think.
Thank you.
All right, and just on a personal note, I'm very excited about this project. I think it's a great project. The two projects that we've heard today are awesome.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Glad to hear that.
All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, thank you. Anybody say
Yeah, more.
more seconding?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.